Good afternoon. I apologize for the delay. Welcome to our January 28, 2020 School Board Work Session. And I just want to thank everyone for being here today, including my colleagues. And we're going to go ahead and get started. And so I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Bird to run us through our work session today. And let me just say, the goal is, once we're done, is just let everybody know, for the board after the work session, we're going to have discipline. In here, we have one case that we need to discuss, so we may have to ask everyone at the end of the work session to please leave the room so that we can conduct that in private. And then after that, we're going to break so that some folks can get some dinner and then head over to Bartow High School for our school board meeting this evening. So that's kind of the agenda for the day. Okay, with that, Madam Superintendent.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start with our agenda item. I would like to see if Mr. Pitts, if you want to flip, are you okay to start first with Mr. Talbot?
I can go, or if you want to flip.
I just saw you walk in. I want to give you a few moments to catch your breath.
Okay,
so,
I'll take my breath.
Okay. So we'll go to item 2 and then we'll come back to item 1. Item 2 that's going to come before you is a Ridgeview Global Studies Academy contract modification. And we have Ms. Bridges and Ms. Amato that's going to come before us and explain that modification to us today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So, as you know, Ridgeview Global is a high-performing charter school, so the only thing we are modifying is last year their board, back in January, approved to add 9th grade, and then rolling up with the following school year to add 10th grade. They are high-performing. They do have the capacity. Therefore, we do have to honor that request due to the high-performing status. They do have the occupants, the capacity, so the only thing modified of the contract is addressing the grade level changes. Other than that, the contract stays as is.
Are there any questions? Okay. And we want to make sure we bring this before you so that we can have this clear for the public why there's a modification.
Oh.
Okay.
Right. And I did want to add that that's the last grade level that they intend to add. So they are not planning to add 11th and 12th grade. They will stay K through 10.
That was in the backup.
Yes, interesting. Wanted to point that out.
Yeah.
Ms. Miller?
Is that something that, I've not seen a K-10. Is that something that charters do?
Well, a charter can set whatever grade levels they wish, and in the case of a high performing, they don't even need to come to us for approval.
Right.
So it is a little bit of an unusual setup. Many of the 10th graders may be matriculating to the collegiate program.
Oh, so that's what they're
So,
okay.
yeah.
And are they any of them from there do pre-collegiate, or we're still working on them advertising outside of?
I'm sorry. When
Do you have Ridgeview pushing pre-collegiate or just the collegiate?
We only have them, since they have their own 9th and 10th,
Yeah.
I would anticipate that they're only looking at pushing the 11th and 12th grade. So, and that's going to be on a space available competitive basis, so there's certainly no guarantee.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Ms. Fields?
So what happens to the kids that's not going to be able to get into the pre-collegiate? Will we know exactly where those kids are going to be from?
Well, it's going to depend on what their zone school is, or if they apply to any other programs. For many of them, I believe that if they're not going to the collegiate program, they will be going back to their zone schools.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So now, Mr. Pitts, I think you've caught your breath, and Mr. Talbot's coming before you. And this one is coming before you. It's about the facility use program rates that we have not had an adjustment, and I don't want to get into too much of their overview. I believe that they sent this out prior to today's meeting to all the boards, but they have it loaded, and they will go through the PowerPoint as well.
Good morning. Good.
Good afternoon. How is
Good
everybody
afternoon.
today?
Wonderful, great
Wonderful,
to see
good.
your face.
Well, thank you.
Yes, that's such a nice
It's wonderful to see all of your faces today.
Are you still our employee?
Yeah. Yes,
Sort of.
sort of, yeah.
A little bit.
My badge did work when I came.
It did. So that was a good sign,
Yes.
right?
That's
Yeah.
an IT problem.
Lynn with the finger.
Oh, you're so bad.
Not yet, not yet.
So use of facilities, it has been quite a while since we have come to the board to raise rates. And the primary reason we wanted to come and talk about rates has to do with Bryant Stadium. When we acquired Bryant Stadium a couple years ago, we essentially applied the same rates that we already applied to regular high school stadiums. And Bryant Stadium is really its own venue. So that's the main reason that we wanted to bring the rate proposal to you today. And I'm going to go take about a 3-minute presentation to kind of go over use of facilities. In Florida, school districts are required to give public reasonable access to facilities. Use of facilities program currently resides in finance. It's been in a couple different divisions over the years. And we have decided to transition the program under Dan Talbot in athletics. And I'll tell you the main reason for that. Dan is at all of these facilities. Throughout the day, as questions come up, I can't answer most questions having to do with facilities, but Dan's very intimate with those facilities, and it just made sense to move this program under Dan. Rental rates have not been updated for many years. This past May, we implemented a new software program called Facilitron to manage the use of facilities program, which resulted in a $25,000 a year savings to the district. Now, Facilitron is way more robust than the old School Dude program that we used to use. Facilitron is a operation that is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if a renter is using Bryant Stadium on a Saturday night, they have issues, they can call Facilitron and get some assistance. So that's one of the main differences between Facilitron and the old School Do that we used to have. Facilitron offers a lot of reports that are really nice. For instance, the report that you see in front of you is a report that I receive every day that lists out the events that are going to happen at every school. It lists a contact person, contact information, what type of extra charges, if they're going to need custodial staff, if they're going to use the gym, that sort of thing. This is one of my favorite features because when use of facilities fell under me, driving home at night, drive by Bartow High School, not to pick on Bartow High School, but I see the lights on, you know, those 1,000-watt bulbs out there, and I'm wondering who is supposed to be using the field. Well, if I or any other administrator want, you can get an email that would let you know what's going on at each school. So that's a huge, I think, big safety issue for the district. They have different calendar options. You can look at all the sporting events that's going on. You can look at different types of schools. You can look at if it's an internal applicant or external renter. What the schools are supposed to do is their athletic director or other designee should be going on Facilitron, putting their events on there so we can see them. That also blocks out the different facilities from being rented from another renter. Going through this pretty quick if you have any questions here. Here's a another page report out of Facilitron that shows the number of hours that facilities are used. Eventually, what's going to happen is Facilitron is going to be able to upload our utility fees so we can start to get a true picture of what it actually costs to rent facilities on a square foot basis, that sort of thing. We've only been in since May. We're hoping during the summer that they'll be able to add that into our program, because our rates that you're going to see in a minute are basically just compared to what other districts use. They're not really based on facts as far as what it really costs to use our facilities, but that's what we're working towards with Facilitron. Another report, this report shows us out of the last year how many events were declined, how many were canceled, how many pending, how many approved. Now, in the old days, if somebody wanted to use Auburndale High School, the person would go up to the high school, fill out a report, fill out a form, ask the principal if they could use the form. Then on the back end, they would send the information over to use of facilities and finance. We would check insurance, check to see if they're a 501c3 and that sort of thing. The big difference with Facilitron is all of that's done up front. What a user does is they'll go on Facilitron's website, say that we want to rent a football field, a football stadium the week of January 14th. It'll show what's available. They go in and fill out the information, and the principal's not contacted until the very end. So it saves school time until everyone's vetted, and then the principal still gets the final say on whether they want the facility to be rented or not. Another report here, approved percentage by organization. Ridge Community High School approves the most on a percentage of any organization. Rental revenue by organization. George Jenkins makes the most money. That's a church called Access Church. Just a side note, they were in the news just a few months ago where they paid over $1 million of debt for folks that had medical bills. But they rent George Jenkins High School. Bryant Stadium's number 2. Another report that you can see in Facilitron, this report shows the hours of usage. If you look at the left, the boys club uses our facilities more than any other outside group. The green bar next to it shows the revenue they bring in. So it's utilization and charges. Over the last few years, here's our revenue and expense for use of facilities. Most of the expense is personnel, custodians, and that sort of thing. We have one employee that now works for Dan, that her salary is getting charged to use of facilities. Now, as we expand the program, and I really think that Bryant Stadium is going to cause this, that we're going to start to have to come up with a list of custodians and other folks that want to sign up and work these extra hours. Typically, the way it works now, if they're at a school, the school tries to find the appropriate staff to let the folks in and out if they're especially on the weekends or off hours. All right, so that is a quick overview of use of facilities in our Facilitron program.
She's so sorry.
I was talking so fast.
That's why I was slowing down.
We have some questions.
Any questions about that? Yes.
Mr. Townsend?
So just, You had the expenses tallied just then, but that's kind of a guess, right? You just said that we don't, I mean, I think you said before, we don't know what it costs to rent, because based on utilities costs and
Those are the expenses that we charge directly to the fund, which are basically personnel. What I don't know is, does it cost $185 for every hour that we rent a stadium? The true costs that I can see are the personnel cost, but the utilities and the use of the facilities, the how the facilities degrade over time, that's what we really don't know.
well, so when I see this, and I'm sympathetic to changing the rates as a concept, but when I see this, I see that our revenues still pretty well exceed our expenses on this. Like it's not, it doesn't, I don't see an obvious, this is too expensive for us to maintain. So I guess I'm curious, what's driving, I mean, other than just we should do it because we could make more money off of it, what is actually at the heart of changing this?
Because I really think that we're losing, it right now it's just a soft cost to try to capture what the use of a facility, and I'm thinking something like a football stadium where they're playing soccer. Little League football has a football league, and they're using the field. We're charging them some rental fees, and we're charging them for staff. But how that field tears down is an expense that it's very hard to capture.
Right. So like I said, this probably isn't actually capturing the full expense. It's the only expense that we can capture.
The only that we can capture. And the difference between the revenue and the expense, if you want to call it profit, that goes in to support the general fund.
And so, I'm sorry, can I follow up on that?
Go ahead.
Can you explain for the public again, like the big jump related to Bryant Stadium versus other facilities? Because as I read this, it looks like we're doubling it for all football stadiums except Bryant Stadium. But for Bryant Stadium, we're like quadrupling it plus from a lower base to a higher amount.
Sure.
And I guess as you explained that, my first reaction to that would be, is there any way to slow that increase over time? Like to tell people, hey, it's gonna be going up on a fairly steady basis, but instead of quadrupling it in one year, bleed it out over time. I mean, when I look at the expense figures, I don't see a crisis. You know, I accept it's fiscally and fiduciarily, I don't know if you say that, irresponsible for us not to adequately charge, but I don't see a thing that's a crisis. So I wonder if there might be some opportunity to slow the increase a bit, at least for Bryant, and make it consistent with the other stuff. So tell me why that's not okay. Like, just what's the counter argument to that?
The counter argument not to do it like in increments.
Yeah.
I think that's a valid argument. I mean, I wouldn't. I think to give folks some time.
Well, I mean, Dan's got. I'm sure you got a reason. I'm open to it. I just want to hear what you think about that idea.
Well, you look at the synthetic turf versus natural turf. I mean, to replace a grass field, which we can't capture those figures there, but it's $60,000 to resod a field, and when we get a lot of usage on our fields just from our internal events, our biggest issue with facility usage, a lot of people don't want outside people on their fields because we do need time to grow. You look at Dennison Stadium, I mean, we're going to play 12 middle school soccer games there. They have lacrosse there, football there. So when you look at obviously the expense for it, it's not accurate because we haven't captured the replacement of sodding the fields. And then Bryant Stadium, to answer your question, is obviously synthetic turf, which is way more expensive than natural grass. So using that and comparing what other counties are charging I think we're not trying to gauge profit. We're just trying to catch up to our counterparts that border us.
Right. No, I'm not questioning
Yeah.
that at all. I'm just questioning is there something harmful to us in slowing the increase a little bit?
No, I don't think
Like,
so. I think the only issue with that would be you raise it 1 year and you have your customers. We have our loyal customers with Bryant Stadium is booked every single weekend. And then next year you raise them, and then we're going to have to explain why. And then next year we raise them, we're going to have to explain why. It's a 3-year process of, it looks like we're just, we just did the one jump right away, explained it. And obviously the jump to me wouldn't be effective immediately. It's like if you increase ticket sales for games, you want to give your customers time to say, hey, we're going to change the ticket price in a year, so please understand it and build people into that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my only suggestion might be gather those key stakeholders. We know who they are together and ask them which they prefer. Like if they'd say, hey, we'd rather a staggered thing, then fine. If they'd say, hey, we'd rather do it this year, then fine. I mean, I'm just curious. I mean, I'm open to however we want to do it. It's just a big jump on the Bryant Stadium side, and I guess it's almost entirely because of the field, right? That's just because of the expense of placing that field eventually. Is that?
Well, two things. I mean, one, we started off just charging what we were already charging for stadiums. On the right-hand side of your spreadsheet, I showed what the city of Lakeland rates were, and that is an expensive stadium. How old that it is. We recently had to install internet. We've had to redo.
Make upgrades to the
block.
To the press box. We had fencing was a big issue because prior to us purchasing it, Henley Field and Bryant Stadium was one basically facility. We've had to come in and separate those facilities from Florida Southern, who owns Henley Field, because we didn't want the access to the stadium to be open while we were not there or anybody was there with Florida Southern, because we do share the road into the main gate.
So have we cut the rates since we bought it? Like, I mean, that's how I read this. It looks like the city. So we're actually down.
So when the city took over, when we took over from the city, we dropped our rates to match what we had under us, which was a significant drop.
Okay. So the people who are experiencing this have experienced a big cut in their expenses,
Correct.
and now we're trying to catch up a bit.
Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay.
Ms. Cunningham, Ms. Fields, and I think it's Mr. Wilson.
And I too, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and usually when we try to raise rates in any situation, you try to do it incrementally. Obviously, it is the business community, civic organizations, all of it. So, however, the only area that I see that maybe isn't captured in here is the repair and maintenance. I mean, you kind of touched on it with the field, but let me ask a question then. So on your income and expenses, on that expense line, we do not have true numbers then yet to plug into that for the repairs and maintenance. And to me, I think that's going to far outweigh your income on that 2-line thing you just gave us. I believe that it's probably going to far outweigh that income that's coming in because of so many different things. And having been to several of the football games, I've seen the changes and the lights, the poles, the press box, you name it. Because, champions, you got to keep it up and make it look good for the community. And I get that. That's all part of us taking it over. But I know that we did reduce rates to try to help, but at the same time, we have to play catch up and at least cover all of our expenses to do so. And I don't believe we've been covering those this whole time. So I'm with you. If you feel that it should be incremental, I could agree with that. If we can make the one switch immediately, to move, not immediately, but give them whatever date, the first of our fiscal year, perhaps July 1, 2020 would be maybe a good point. I don't know. But I'm, with Mr. Townsend, if we could at least talk to a few of the corporate members or those that you feel use it the most and just kind of get a feel and explain. It's communication. Once again, how did we get to this point? We're not making it looks like we are, but we're not really, and then try to put a price tag on that, which I don't know how you do that, and then present it. And if we can go for the jump, we do. If not, maybe in 2 installments to get there. That would be, you know, the least I would agree with, because we need to make ourselves whole, so.
And what everyone probably needs to understand is by no means are we trying to profit, and, you know,
Right.
we're just want to make sure that
Sure.
we break even, because like you said,
Yes.
we got the 2 figures, but we don't have, you know, when we repair the grass,
Right.
the utilities,
Yes.
the water,
Yeah.
the sewage, all the things, that's not captured in that, you know, so like I said, but we're not trying to profit off our own
Right.
people. We do want to build great community partners
Sure.
with the school district and embrace those, and I think we've have in the past, and I think you know, communication amongst our stakeholders is going
Yes.
to be the most important factor if we do this.
Right, and we can't go in with that income and that expense that you just showed us, right?
Yeah.
Because that leads us all to go, really? We're making money here, what's going on? So
Yeah.
I would like to see, I know you're a crystal balling it, but go back maybe a year, 12 months, 18 months, put some kind of figures on the repairs and stuff. I know that's difficult to do countywide, but perhaps on the Bryant Stadium side,
Okay.
and try to say, we've had it for this many years, we've averaged this much in repair costs, and then divide it, whatever, by 36 months or 3 years, and put some numbers in there, so when you do present it, it doesn't appear like, wow, look at this, we're profiting, like, because that's not the intent.
Correct.
The intent is to cover our expenses and be whole, so that we can offer the beautiful facility and keep it up, so.
Ms. Fields and Mr. Wilson.
I have a couple of questions. I wanted to know, on the Bryant Stadium spreadsheet, which category would the youth leagues fall under? Would it be nonprofit community groups that support our students?
Yes, they typically fall under that nonprofit community groups that support our students.
Okay, and do we have any idea, I know you all have a list of the different leagues, how many leagues do we have that's using?
Currently, right now, the Lakeland Lumberjacks are the only team that use the facility. When we purchased the facility, it was written into the contract that we would provide them a place to play for the next 3 years at no charge until the city of Lakeland could then build them a proper facility for somewhere where they want to go. So right now, the only little league is the Lakeland Lumberjacks, who are at no charge.
And then on occasions, we have other sports events there with countywide leagues and stuff?
Correct. We have the Heartland Lions who play there, which is a football team based out of Highlands County, Polk County, different counties that are based in Lakeland. We have the Lakeland Jokers. We met with them. We had 2 organizations fighting over the stadium. We met with them, came to an agreement, and so they're alternating. So like starting January 5th, there's a game there every Saturday with those 2 leagues in our community.
And then my other question is, I think I know the answer. No one has been advised of a possible increase because you guys are just proposing it, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
All right, and then the effective date that you're proposing, you don't really have an effective date, or do you?
The earliest I thought would be July 1st.
Okay, the beginning of the fiscal year. Okay, and then on the regular rental rate, I just need to understand, there's a flat rate, and in addition to the flat rate, there's a cost for utilities and supplies? Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding that. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes, and we don't always charge utilities. I mean, if it happens, if they're using a tractor during the day,
Yeah,
we don't charge them utilities.
right, right.
If it happens during the
I know.
school day, we're already paying utilities for our own folks, so we wouldn't charge them the utilities for that either. So there are some little caveats like that.
Mr. Wilson, then back to Ms. Reynolds.
So, Mr. Pitts, there's no depreciation in here. Is that what I heard you say?
Correct.
And no repairs and maintenance.
Correct.
That's going to increase the cost significantly, right? So, I have no problem with these rate increases. I do think, however, that if we could do something in the way of estimating a depreciation on it, because at some point in time, you either have to replace it like you do turf, or replace the entire stadium, right? So that's only reasonable to estimate some depreciation on it, which is an expense of doing business there, as well as the repairs and maintenance. That's going to give you the material you need when you go back to those folks and say, hey, we have to do an increase, and just show them this is what it's costing us. Like, for example, on the artificial turf, I don't, if there had been a depreciation expense built in for that, you would have recovered those funds now to make that payment, right? Does that make sense? So I think that would be helpful in making your case.
Yeah, and we've reached out to Beth Cummings, who, a lot of the auditoriums, the athletic fields are probably the main source of renting, and then the auditoriums come in, and like Ms. Cummings said, the seats get worn.
Sure.
The carpet gets
Everything.
worn down with just the so much use, and, obviously with Facilitron, being able to track those hours, how many times was it rented out throughout the year, and like I said, we need to figure out a depreciation cost as
Yeah,
well.
if you can, and if you have the costs, the original costs, it's really not that tough to build a spreadsheet, and if you want me to do that for you, just let me know. I'm happy to help you out with that.
Okay, Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Fortney.
Looking at some of these reports of how many events are going on, what is your capacity like, Coach Talbot, as far as there's a lot of games happening at the same time as all of this? Is this transferring to you?
Yeah, but it's I miss him. So it's been I have Marissa Benjamin that works with me, but lining up workers for Bryant Stadium, making sure the custodian is going to show up there, because in my role with athletics, I take a lot of pride in, I want the people coming in running that facility to be welcomed, to have everything go right, because to me, I represent the school district, and not, even though I'm just part of athletics and now use facilities, I am still the name with the district, so it's very important. So it has increased my workload, which is fine, but organizing and getting on Facilitron, you have a lot of schools that just demand, they don't want anyone in their building, and then you got to go out and have a conversation with the principal, and try to meet common ground, because state statute says we have to provide reasonable access to our facilities. We just can't keep saying no, 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 no. So now I'm going into schools with kind of two different agendas. I can go by and see the athletic director, and then sit down with the principal and talk use of facilities. So it will add, to my job responsibilities.
Okay. Is there anything that, as far as looking towards the future, I would like to think Coach Talbot's going to be here with us forever, but is that something that's common with other athletic directors in comparable counties? Are there any other counties that do it that way? Is it a difference between a director and a senior director position, I guess?
From what I understand, no. That would be the first one that has been given the additional role of use of facilities compared to my counterparts around the state. But I do agree with them. It does make sense, because during the process, when Jason would call me a lot and say, how big is this stadium? How big is that stadium? How big is this gym? Could this gym hold these? So we did work together. So I think that's what made it, make sense that, why doesn't Dan just take over? He's got the knowledge. I'm calling him every day to ask questions, because we don't want to tell, the people interested wrong information and present something that we don't have. So I think it just made sense.
Okay. Ms. Fortney, then Ms. Miller.
You just said that. It's too bad we don't have like a master list, so that it'd be a reference sheet. But my main question is back to the school. So let's say we are renting Bartow High School's facility this evening in the auditorium. Who pays that portion of the, not us, but anybody? How does that money come out of the school's budget, like for water and electricity? Let's say that I'm just curious how, let's say I'm a church and I want to rent an auditorium for something. Who ends up paying that electric bill from 5 to 9, and where does that money come from?
So the vendor pays that
To
use of facilities. Now,
us, to
the finance department, to countywide, which
Okay.
we meaning the finance department, pays for the utilities for all the schools. Schools aren't responsible for the utilities. However,
when did that change? Okay, sorry. I thought they
I'm
used
not
to have
sure.
to budget their utilities and stuff.
yeah, we stopped making that.
Okay,
We stopped
well, that's
making them
nice.
do that. We wanted them to focus on instruction.
Okay, I think they appreciate that. All right.
But the school does get 20% of the rental fee
Okay.
into their supply budget, so they
Gotcha.
can buy extra supplies. So that's if you want to call it an incentive, but it is an incentive for them to let folks to use their facility. They get 20% of the fee.
Thank you.
Ms. Miller?
That wasn't my question, but it made me think of something. That's something the regionals could help share the message, so you're not running to principals trying to sell something that's statute, that our regionals could share. Not only is it statute, but you would get 20% of the fee, the rental fees, because it really shouldn't be your job to do the, this is the law, you must comply. But I know that's part of it.
Yeah, but the next thing is, the next principals meeting, I just would ask for, time in front of all the principals
Right.
to, put a name with a face, and kind of explain it from there and kind of get them all in one shot. But the high school ones have been easy because I have a great relationship with them.
Right.
And the middle school I'm working on through middle school athletics. And then, to me, the work with Ms. Henderson and Ms. Townley to bridge that gap, because if I do have one deficiency, I think it is the reality with the elementary schools.
Right.
I was fortunate enough today to take students from Central Michigan that are looking to become teachers. I took them to Spencer Holland this morning and the Pinewood to tour classrooms and kind of do a pseudo interview to try to get more teachers down. So bridging that gap with the elementary school principals will be fun and exciting, and I'm looking forward to that challenge, just for the fact that now I have my hand in the entire district instead of my little piece of the pie in athletics over there in the corner.
Now you mentioned, and I thought this was very effective, especially not only for Bryant Stadium, but this custodian trying to book, for our custodians that are looking for hours, is it just going to be for Bryant Stadium, or is there somewhere they could go to look for hours in multiple locations?
So my goal would be to we want to do obviously school-based personnel first to give them the opportunity. So to have each school create a list of people that, because we require someone to be there as well as a custodian, a site manager.
Right.
To have people that are listed in schools, and then get with custodial services to have a list where if someone at the school says, no, I can't work this weekend, and then I have a backup list of anybody that is looking to, I guess, create more revenue for themselves, and then really target teachers as well that wouldn't mind getting up there Saturday. I mean, Bryant Stadium's been okay. The coaches are the ones that, open the facility and are there. I trust them because they're there more than I am coaching, and then they close down the stadium. So the same idea and principles would use is to get each school to have those people, your go-to people, and then on the other have a list of people that I'll work anywhere, anytime, send me, it does not matter. So we take care of our own.
And usually, from a principal's perspective, and I'll touch on the elementary schools, when they have people want to use their facilities, the different organizations actually go to the principal then, and then the principals there will initiate. And principals are good about trying to get their staff first. One, because they know the layout of their buildings. Two, because they have the keys already in their buildings. So they usually offer their people first within their buildings to cover when any of those facilities are using it, because they do know the buildings themselves. And a lot of them live pretty close if they're going to want to do that within their own school system, school buildings. So that's a couple of things that, looking at from a principal's perspective, is how that usually operates within the schools. So I just wanted to make sure I shared it. So elementary is not that it's foreign to them, because they're used to, like, the girls.
Right.
Girl Scouts reach out, Boy Scouts reach out, different things like that, and different churches do reach out to elementary schools as well. So, okay, so Mr. Townsend?
Yeah, I guess my main concerns about this are really the narrative of the presentation. I mean, I think, can you go back to the profit expense thing? I mean, the expense, overall, yeah, revenue.
Yeah.
I almost didn't include that on there.
All right. I mean, my suggestion, as if you go out in the community to show this, is have revenue and then have personnel cost, and then underneath have multiple other expenses that you don't know, and it's okay not to know. We're capturing them, but as you go out and you show this to the public, and my suggestion is also, particularly for Bryant Stadium and probably for other things across the county, I would recommend taking this presentation to the Lakeland City Commission for 10 minutes, and showing, hey, this is what we're doing. I think the good news of this that I whiffed on is that we've cut these folks' costs a lot. that's not the narrative that's going to come through this. I mean, I think we've cut you. I mean, we've worked with you to facilitate you, but we have to be able to sustain the facilities. That's the narrative that I think needs to come through this. And also, I think it has to be beyond just the school district, because the people who are going to experience this are largely out in the community doing community things. And I know you guys are talking to them, but I would be happy to go to Lakeland City Commission with you, by the way, and stand and take questions too, if you ever want to do that.
Great idea.
Ms. Reynolds?
I know in Winter Haven we have an interlocal agreement with the city to be able to share spaces. Does this have any effect on, we're still going to be able, okay.
No, we have quite a few interlocal agreements that cut out the cost.
Great, okay. Thank you.
Now, I did want to point out real quick, the one major change is we added security. We've never had security built into this program. And of course, after Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, I just felt like that was real important that we require security. And after speaking with Captain Seymour, we have suggested that we would require an officer if there's at least 100 folks in attendance, and then a second officer if there's over 250, and then if at our discretion if it's larger than that. And we would actually we would not put that on the renter. We would actually schedule the off-duty police officers ourselves instead of asking them to do it.
But they would pay for it.
But they would pay. They would just pay the $35.
'Cause I know doing proms and stuff through the years, we had to do that when we would go somewhere, like, we had to schedule them and pay for it, so that's a benefit.
So that's another thing,
Right.
security, you know.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. While you have the word expense, it would be helpful if you had expenses, ... and then under it, personnel, custodial, maintenance and repair, security, depreciation, supplies. You gotta take the disinfectants, the clean, I mean, just all of that. I think the more we can tell the story, each one of us would understand it better. And I think those numbers will be more truer. And then I think this may, be the proper option at that time.
Okay.
So, but thank you. Y'all have done a great presentation and certainly enlightened me, I know.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good to see you, Jason.
Thank you. It's good
Yes.
to see
Come
everybody.
back anytime.
Yeah, don't be a stranger
I won't be
now.
a stranger.
Okay. Is he really?
Okay, the next item that's going to come before you is going to be a computer science certification grant. So I know we have Andrew, and I thought I saw Jeff. Did I see Jeff? Oh, I did. Okay.
We're bringing before you today a notification of the Computer Science Certification Grant, which has been awarded from Florida Department of Education. The purpose of this grant is to increase the number of our classroom teachers which are certified in the Computer Science K-12 certification area. FLDOE anticipates that at some point in the future, legislation will be passed which will require those teachers that are teaching the computer science courses to be certified in CS K-12. Currently, we have teachers that are certified in other areas, such as business education. In fact, the vast majority of our teachers that are teaching our computer science courses are not certified in computer science K-12. So this grant is in anticipation of that change, and we'll hope to increase the number of our teachers that have that certification.
And could you tell us the total of the grant that we
Yes,
have?
the total of the grant is $333,546. And we do anticipate this is going to be a one-time allocation, that will not be recurring funds. The tentative kind of budget item that you have in front of you reflects what we have anticipated as the bonuses for different areas. But as these are bonuses, they will have to be bargained with our collective bargaining units.
Ms. Fortney?
What percentage are not certified in computer science of our workforce?
I believe we have, because we have some instructors that are teaching through virtual,
Right.
through Florida Virtual and some other areas, we have approximately 29 actual teachers that are teaching computer science courses from my records, and I believe 28 of those are not currently certified in computer science. Some of them are, have industry certifications, or I'm sorry,
Right.
not industry certifications, but they get their certifications through their industry experience. So it's not clear right now, because we haven't even seen legislation about this, if those will be grandfathered in or if they will also have to get the certification.
Right. But, so this grant would help cover the district's costs of those 28 folks, or the folks' cost?
So if you look at this, there are two distinct portions of the grant. 40%
Right.
of the grant funds can be used to just promote computer science instruction in secondary classrooms. So the grant doesn't specify what that looks like. And speaking with our workforce department, they indicated that one area that would be helpful is to increase the number of industry certifications for our secondary students, so that the teachers will have industry certifications, which will then allow our students to get additional industry certifications. We also identified a professional development opportunity, the NASA Space Conference, which typically has some of the computer science components, which teachers can then bring back. So those are the two components that we included for the 40% of the grant related to increasing computer science curriculum. The majority of the grant, the 60% of the grant funds, must be used for professional development related to increasing our numbers of teachers that are certified in CS K through 12. So for that, we have the FLDOE has developed test prep workshops, because I'm not a computer science person, so I'm not sure exactly what's on that certification exam, but I understand that it is very difficult and it takes some preparation for the teachers to be able to pass that examination. So FLDOE has created some test prep workshops that teachers are able to sign up and go to. They are multiple day events, and they would have to travel for those if they want to participate in those. So the actual bonus that a teacher would get if they participate in that workshop would be $4,000. And again, this is tentative right now. And then after the workshop, if they then take the certification exam and receive a passing score on their certification exam before the end of this grant period, then they'd be eligible for the additional $4,500 bonus. We've also put in approximately $16,000 to try and identify a local university to help us develop an in-house test prep course that our people can use in the future to be able to continually provide professional development to our staff, so that in the years to come, we can sustain this.
Good idea.
And what's the length of the grant?
This grant ends, it was originally scheduled to end on June 30th, but they've told us that they will extend it to July 31st. It's a very short time period.
Mr. Townsend?
Do we have actual human candidates identified? I mean, do we have people lined up and ready to go, or no?
We have a list of the teachers that we would like to participate in the test prep. Those are our teachers that are actually teaching the computer science courses. But the actual notification has to be handled through the collective bargaining with our collective bargaining unit. So we haven't notified the teachers yet.
Okay. Secondly, what exactly does computer science consist of when are they studying coding? Are you studying like silicon? I mean, what are sort of the core things they have to learn in this brief period of time?
I think that depends on what grade level you're referring to. Young kids would start learning simple coding by dropping and dragging. As you grow through that, you might use Python and things like that in order to code. Also depends on what programs you use within your system.
FLDOE has provided us with a course list of all the courses that they consider computer science courses. Those include actual computer science, such as like Python and things like that. And then down at the middle school, it can include some of the mathematics and basic science courses. And I can provide a list for you guys if you'd like to see those specific courses, which are.
Sure, I would actually, yeah, that's fine if you can. So, I mean, I guess the other part I'm asking about is, are we confident this is enough time for our people to pass these tests if they're very, very difficult? I mean, does the state keep records on what the rate of passage on this is?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked at that.
Ms. Fields?
I had a similar question. Is it realistic to think that we can get this done in about 5 months? That's what we're talking about. And is there any way to get an extension, anything like that?
We have asked about the extension, and that's why they said that they would extend it to the end of July for us. I don't know what stipulations they're under. This grant was originally released in August, and it included financial consequences within the grant, which made it so that not very many districts, I think only 1 or 2 districts in the state of Florida, chose to participate in the program because if the original financial consequences would have made it so that we would have had to pay back money that we have spent, so we would have had to go into our operating funds to expend that. Back in late October, they made a change to the request for application, the RFA, to kind of decrease those financial consequences and make it so that it wasn't so bad. So that's when our district decided to start looking at this and seeing if we wanted to pursue it. So that's why it's a little bit shorter than kind of a normal grant period. But regardless, they originally put it out in August and it was going to end in June. But so it is a short time period.
Ms. Cunningham?
Yeah, and I would think that some of the academies that we have that have the IMAG and computer design and robotics and all of that that's both in middle school and high school components around the county, I think some of those teachers would be absolutely fabulous to target, to at least offer the opportunity to, because they're probably have the knowledge from working with the kids to be able to pass this. I understand there's probably a little bit of prep work, but they do so much with our kids in some of those innovative technological academies throughout Polk County. I mean, I just think they would be a great place to start and then reach out from there.
Plus, they've already learned by doing.
Correct.
Which is the best way.
The best way to learn. Yeah, good point. Just as a thought.
Any other questions?
That would be a paradigm shift.
No. Well,
Can you let us know how it goes? I mean, come back and report on it in August?
Sure, I can include that in my quarterly grant summary next August.
That's it.
This August.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
August
Yeah.
2020, okay,
Yeah.
sorry. It's like next August.
He's still living in August of 2019. That's the mind. Thank you. Okay. The next item that's coming before us is the discussion for Mr. Davis and the Achievement Academy. And I don't know who's coming with him. I think it's just him. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How was everyone?
I'm doing well.
Good.
How are you doing?
Good. Ms. Miller stated at the last work session, I believe last week, that she wanted this on the work session agenda. So we have it open. We also received a IRIS request, which I apologize that it went into one paragraph. It was broken out.
I figured it was. That's why I brought it up last time.
So I will make sure I attach a document, Word document from now on. But I'm here to answer any questions. At this time last year, we had proposed to cut 12 charter school systems, cut their transportation services. We later in the year, I think it was on December the 11th of 2018, I proposed to eliminate charter school transportation and under 2-mile transportation. We discussed it again on January 8th of 2019. I felt like I had a consensus to move forward with the elimination of charter school transportation, but not a good feel about relieving the under 2 miles students. Excuse me. So we sent out letters to all charter schools. Later we had some discussion and debate about giving the Victory Ridge Academy and Achievement Academy more time to prepare for getting into transportation business on their own. And so that's what we have done. It's been about a year. It will give them about a year and a half. Victory Ridge Academy has picked up 14 surplus buses from us at this point, which are buses that that you have you have deemed, the board has deemed surplus. They were in running condition. There were some of our best buses that we had in the surplus condition, and we also have earmarked 5 or 6 buses for Achievement Academy, which I believe they have looked at, but have not decided whether to take them or not. I know the question was asked, if we took them and decided not to do the transportation, could we give them back? And that is actually what they would have to do, so yes.
Well, since I asked for you to be here today, I appreciate, we talked about this when we first discussed it, that Achievement Academy would be the most affected by these choices. Victory Ridge has a foundation and a much larger school. So I talked with Stephen Whitaker, and he was definitely able to move on transportation different than Achievement Academy. And so I think some of the board members have toured and talked to their leadership, who we have some here today that might need to take questions that I or you don't have the answer to. But, and I've heard from the community, and after meeting with them and talking about all of this, I would like to talk about what what I understand they did try to do. The buses that were looked at to make them feasible and compliant based, the money that would have to be raised to do that. They're in a different, we're talking about a school that has to fundraise over $600,000 to stay open for a population providing services, a medical model of therapy and education to students that we end up getting, but from 3 to 6. So it's students that we don't have programs for, that we couldn't easily take into our schools with the same type of services and therapy they're currently receiving. So that's from the community, from leadership in the community, as well as parents and citizens. That's who came to me and said, you know, we'd like some time on this. I know this is something that was discussed. We would like more time to see what we can do. As far as grants, Tom helped them look at grants they didn't qualify for. There's been movement. I don't want anybody to believe that Achievement Academy has not worked to become independent with their transportation, but everything they're coming into is the cost right now to do this in this amount of time would not be feasible for them. And so I would like to talk as a board and the superintendent's input on what we think we could do to extend that or help them, because we can't let these kids not be able to access. And right now, I looked at, you sent us how many students are being served and how many buses. Right. Right now, we get all of their FTE transportation plus another almost 30,000. So this isn't a money thing. I think it might be we have to look at strategic placement of, I don't know if we've talked about hub stops. I'm not really sure what's been gone over, but just alternatives to buy a little more time to see if this is, to get them going so they're successful and these students are successful. And so that's why I kind of brought you here today.
And I'll add that you're right, it was never a money thing. It was when we listened to the drivers after meeting with our drivers and the routing. And I think Mr. Davis is going to talk a little bit more about that with the shortage of drivers and what the future could look like for transportation with the additional routing that we're going to have to do if the legislation passed with reducing the under 2 miles for us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's moving from what we see. It's moving right now in the direction it could happen. We don't know that yet.
Give a little more detail about that to help kind of shape the picture.
Like the conversation. Ms. Cunningham?
So my comment is this. These are our youngest, most vulnerable students, bottom line. So my question is, if that timeline doesn't work right now for them, for Achievement Academy, if the timeline we have set, I understand Victory Ridge is in a different place, but if it doesn't work, what can we negotiate to make it work? I mean, bottom line, it's not us and them, it's us, because they're our kids, and they're our most vulnerable, from what I understand. And so I think we need to come together and say, okay, you've asked for a year, whatever it was. I don't have it in front of me, I'm sorry. But if it's been a year and they can't make it work, what do you need and what timeline? How can we assist till that point? And I understand legislature and all of that, but at some point, we're responsible. Free public education for all students. And I just feel that it's huge. So personally, I'd like to see us that are back and forth, sit down at the table, I'll sit with you and a cup of coffee, and we need to go, what can we do what is a timeline that is acceptable to you? Because here's how I mean, the biggest thing about our board is communicating. I think if everybody understands and knows and we're on the same page, we are all 7 of us, I feel very confident saying, we want to take care of our kids. We just need more data and information. And if you just indicated that perhaps it isn't just money, it's other things, fine. How do we resolve those issues and make it work, not for me, not for you, not for them, for the kids? That's really what I'm looking at. And I'll leave it at that. And if you can offer some suggestions, or Madam Superintendent or board members, I just feel like we got to do something. We can't just go, whoops, we said a year, you're not done, bye, see you later, and figure it out. I can't do that. I personally can't do that.
I don't think that's the mindset
Okay.
we're taking either. We're looking at the entire transportation as a holistic.
Yes.
There's a House Bill 1043, Senate
Right.
Bill 1410 that could reduce or could change the hazardous walking criteria, which could impact Polk County significantly based on the language. It's got some momentum. I was at the mid-year directors meeting last week. We discussed the impacts it could have on a rural district like Polk. It could have a significant impact on a district like Hillsborough County, less of an impact because of just how crosswalks are set up and things of that nature. There's also a movement to change it from 2 miles to 1 mile, the distance between walking, and that would add another 16,600 students, which I don't know what we would do if they told us we had to do that right away. So I mean, we're transporting, our last FTE count, we've transported 52 students from Achievement Academy. If we eliminated their transportation and eliminated that transportation, basically it frees up one bus that's overcrowded. It reduces the overcrowding on one of our lift buses. It will free up 1 bus to help do high school in Area 5 and 2 buses in Area 6 that could help do a Tenor Rock High School and a Bartow High School. But I'm also coming to the superintendent this year and asking for more positions. Sure. In 2006, we were at 550 positions. We gave up 39 positions so that to help balance the budget.
Sure.
And we've stayed at that number since then. And we've added magnet schools, which are very large zones. We've added, we've had growth. We're adding a Davenport school, or Davenport Elementary, and then, of course, the high school that's coming on board. So the resources is what we're looking at, and you know, I'm at the pleasure of the superintendent and the board of what we need to do to move forward. I would be happy to sit with the group and look at different alternatives. I know there's private contracted companies out there that can assist. We basically took all of their students, routed them, and it would take 10 buses to do 160 students. If they transported every one of their students, it would take 10 buses to do it. If they transport 60 students, which is what we have on record, it would take 6 buses to do it. The cost of training a bus driver or a bus attendant it doesn't cost the school anything. We do that for free. So, you know, I'm open to suggestions, but we're facing some very challenging uphill battles as well. And looking at the entire picture, I know it doesn't sound like much, but freeing up 4 buses makes a huge difference. And then coming to the superintendent and asking for more resources when we're transporting students that by statute we don't have to transport, and 11 schools have lost that transportation. And I understand the need for the students. I do. And but we are facing some challenging times with some transportation. and getting the students to school.
Ms. Fields, then Mr. Townsend.
So, Girls Inc. was in this position some years ago. We were using Citrus Connection bus to transport our girls from the various schools, and we were told by the transportation from the state and the federal level that they couldn't do that because it was more like a chauffeur service. So we had to do what Achievement Academy is having to do right now, is figure out how we were going to continue to transport our girls. We didn't have as much time as the Achievement Academy had to come up with the game plan, so we established our own fleet service. Is it expensive? Yes, it is. Because of the drivers, because of the maintenance of the buses, not being able to afford to buy a new bus, having to get used buses. So I understand and I respect what the Achievement Academy staff and the students are going through. My daughter used to work for the Achievement Academy. I love the Achievement Academy, and I believe, and everyone at this table believe that they're doing a marvelous, a great work in our community. My question is, and probably this can't be answered today, is where is the Achievement Academy on moving along and being able to provide their own fleet service, and how much more time would be needed for them to do that?
Okay. And that would be a conversation we'll have to have to find with them, because I don't think you have that answer. Do you have that now?
Would you be able to answer that, Mr. Wood?
Hi, I'm John Burton. I'm Executive Director at Achievement Academy. First of all, thank you for the discussion. Thank you for inviting us to participate. We appreciate all of your efforts to this point on behalf of all of the students in Polk County. We, like you, believe in students first. Thank you for the discussion, Chairman Cunningham. We have researched extensively, Kay, to your question, and we've looked at starting our own bus service, even accepting the surplus buses which Polk County Schools graciously offered. The low-end cost would be about $250,000 in round numbers that we're looking at, and that's assuming a lot of things about the surplus buses. On the high end, it would exceed $500,000. We don't have the financial wherewithal to take that on. We're looking at other options. We continue to look at options, and we would welcome any discussion with Polk County Schools in finding a reasonable solution. In terms of the time, we were all hoping and pointing towards having this solution now, but there isn't a solution that we've been able to identify that we can afford at this point. So we continue to look. I wish I had a better answer for that particular question. We don't have that at this point. The answers that we have, the numbers aren't adding up for us. So we would welcome any assistance that we could get from Polk County School.
Mr. Townsend, then Mr. Wilson.
First, I appreciate Rob sort of laying out what the choice is. Like I think for a long time I've wanted to hear what the buses freeing up would be versus, I mean, we haven't been very specific about that in the past. I think it's always good to be specific about what we gain, what we lose. Secondly, I think a lot of this also, and this is what's in my mind, I think when we're talking about Achievement Academy and Victory Ridge, we're talking to in some degree, there's kind of a category error at work. When we say the word charter, there's a lot contained within that word. I hope we'll start to think differently about, I see three broad types of charters. You know, one's the big startup Ralph R's of charters that are here to, you know, make money off your kids and going to be high dropout rate charters, and you know, that's one kind. We don't have those here yet, really. A couple of exceptions. The next group is, you know, the conversion folks, the folks who replicate what we do, like they're in their own way, who they're inherently competitive. We're all trying to work to be a little more collaborative with them, because the Ralph R's charters putting them under pressure too. But like the McKeels and the Lake Wales charters of the world, I got no problem with them providing their own like that's, you know, they're replicating what we do. Then there's this other small category, which is, I think, the original purpose of charter schools to begin with. Nobody is doing the educational service for this. What was it, 3 to 6? Is it
Yes,
3 to 6?
3 to 6 year old.
I mean, Montessori has that age group, but like nobody's doing this age group in terms of the really profound conditions they have. Every single one of those kids is going to end up with us. It's a different model. Like they're almost like a contractor that we're paying to prep their kids, prepare their kids to do well in the system that we're going to run. I am very much in favor of treating them very differently than we treat McKeel. Like, and that's not me being hostile to McKeel. I heard some good news about the folks coming there. I think they're working with us. Like, but it's a very different kind of model. Like, Achievement Academy isn't here to compete with us. They're not here to drain our resources. They're here to actually enhance our resources by extending them. I also am very sympathetic to the specific trade-offs you just mentioned. I mean, that's a four buses is a significant resource. I get it. I don't know what the answer is, but I really don't think the answer is just to walk away. I think we bang our heads against this problem again and see what we can come up with. If it means we give them another year and you blame the board for not freeing those four buses up, I don't mean blame in the sense of, you know what I mean. I mean, that's blame I'm willing to take. You know, as a community, the people who are in this with us we need to be in it with them, and I just am in favor of treating Achievement Academy very differently than we treat those other categories of charters for that reason.
I think that's Mr. Wilson, then back to Ms. Reynolds.
So, Mr. Davis, the surplus buses, we're giving those free, correct? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, I understand there could be some repairs and maintenance. Is that where the rub is, sir? Is it with repairing?
Part of it with us assuming those buses.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, Mr. Burton, you also have the additional cost of providing drivers, correct?
Correct, and care persons on the bus because of the age and the our special needs kids. We have to have an aide on the bus.
So those are the challenges you have in funding, in getting the funding you need to provide the busing. Is that right?
If you're just looking at the buses, yes, and the cost of that, yes.
Is there something else we were talking about? Is there another piece to it I missed?
Well, I think what Billy had said is spot on. I mean, we're providing a service for very young children who are going to come to your schools. And we feel that students truly do come first, and we're doing the best job that we can to prepare those students for the next chapter of their educational careers.
If the financial piece could be somehow addressed, do you feel like your organization, your school could handle the busing, or am I hearing that it's probably not something you could really take on?
Well, what I referenced before is the first year startup cost is at a minimum $250,000 in round numbers. The highest dollar figure, and Ron could probably verify this, that we've provided total in terms of FTE dollars plus the additional cash that were billed at the end of the school year to make up the difference between, as I understand it, what was expended by the school board and what we owe for whatever expenses is about just under $170,000. So in addition, if we were to qualify for FTE dollars and all things are the same, we still have to make up that additional dollars for the minimum, for the low end. And that's for, with all due respect, and we appreciate the offer of the surplus buses. Those buses have 250,000 miles on them. We've had mechanics look them over thoroughly. They're not going to cost nothing to get them up to safety standards that the state requires, as you well know.
Right.
So when I say 250, that's just to get them to our place. Doesn't include a lot of the additional expenses. And I'm not boo-hooing at all. But in terms of numbers, Lynn, that you're asking about, we don't have that capacity. We're raising, as Lisa said, about $600,000 a year, primarily so that we can provide one-on-one therapies for all of our kids, 30 minutes every week based on needs. So it's at a high level, and that's where that funding is going.
And let me, so I agree this is an exception. I agree with that completely, but it is also a charter. And when applying for the charter, you agreed to provide transportation. That was part of the contract.
Well, as part of that contract, I believe it was Polk County Schools that was providing that contract as part of our contract.
I think it's a standard contract that they provide transportation, I'm pretty sure. So I think that's kind of where the rub is, because then we have every charter school is going to say, wait a minute, we all have the same contract that we provide transportation, and now you've made an exception. So that creates some challenges for it. So I guess my question is, if you could close that gap, if we could find a way to close that gap, could you take on the transportation? If you can't, then it's a different fight for us.
Right.
In my opinion, if I may.
Sure.
In my opinion, at this point,
okay,
transportation is not something that we could take on.
Okay. So that's really the key issue. It's just not something your school is able to manage for whatever reason. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Okay, so that's a different battle. That's something else for us to address then, I think.
Ms. Reynolds, then Ms. Cunningham.
I know that you alluded a little bit to legislation that's moving through. Those 16,000 kids that would be included that live 1 mile to a school to 2 miles from a school, how many of those, is that additional to what we're currently transporting that's the hardship? Okay, so it would be 16,000 additional students.
If that is passed, it would be 16, we've already calculated, it would be 16,000 additional students that we would have to transport to school by state statute.
Do we have any idea what percentage of, because even outside of the 2 miles, a lot of kids' parents will drive them or things like that. Do we think that
we took
50% of?
We transport about 50% of the population now.
Right.
So if you took 50% of that, make it 8,000. Okay. That's still a significant.
Right. Absolutely.
We would have to order new buses, which is a 120 to 160 day turnaround. So I would think that if that was passed, they would tier us into that, but it would still be resources that we would need to start collecting right away.
Do you know if there's any indication in legislation when that would go into effect, if it's a July 1 start date or?
It has July 1 start date. I don't think, it's hard to say if that would hold. I don't think.
How many, to transport those 8,000 students, how many more buses would we need? How many more staff members bus drivers would we have to hire?
So if we just do a simple calculation.
Sorry, I should have given you all my math questions before we got here.
We have 160 more buses with 160 more drivers. So currently we have 511 driver positions, and we're 21 drivers short. We've averaged between 25 and 21 drivers short the entire year. And we also have about 66 people call out on average during a week's period. So it would be significant, not just for Polk County, but the entire state of Florida to do that.
I just did a quick review of that bill. I didn't see a provision for funding it.
Of course not.
Did not.
I did not. I'll do a more detailed review, but I did not immediately see a funding provision.
Other than the if FTE we get for anyone eligible that is riding a bus, and right now if they live within a mile, that mile to 2 mile sweet spot, we're not getting funding for them, even if we're.
No, we actually get penalized in a way that, because it lowers our average bus occupancy. So every student that we add that's not eligible for transportation goes against our overall average bus occupancy, which is less funding that we receive from the state.
Do we get penalized? Sorry, this is all the question. Do we get penalized for the charter when we put charter students on our buses, or no? If they're in the
If they are eligible, no.
Okay.
And I think in the contract, if they're not eligible, then the charter pays the entire cost.
Ms. Cunningham, then Ms. Miller.
So my question was, back to Mr. Burton, I guess, I was thinking that there was a point at which you thought you could do busing, it's just not in the timeline that we've given you with the others. So am I hearing now, though, that busing is not an option for you, or you just need more time, an extra year, 6 months, 18, whatever, to provide your own transport? That's what I'm trying to get clear on. Is there a time after which you feel that Achievement Academy could take on its own transportation?
I would answer that two different ways.
Okay.
If it means becoming a provider of bus transportation by owning, operating, maintaining, insuring, hiring drivers, probably not. If we can identify another organization or company that can provide that service, that's certainly a possibility. To date, we have not been able to identify that.
Okay, thank you. You've answered my question.
Ms. Miller.
Were you
and Ms.
before me? I
Bills.
feel like I
Oh, I'm
remember
sorry.
you.
See you over there?
Just,
Go ahead.
Yeah, what everybody said is absolutely point on. I'm a science teacher, so problem solving. So let's say that you have 6 buses that need repair. Could we provide the repair and get them up to speed within our own services? And then could you then take care of the bus drivers? I guess would be my, yeah, I know, but.
Yeah, repair, maintenance, who's,
Right, but.
yeah, insurance liability, all of it.
But what portion could you?
You're saying no.
I'm not prepared to answer that question right now, only because whatever we decide has got to be approved by our board, so I don't want to speak out of turn. We're open to any reasonable solution for Achievement Academy that we can.
I'm just trying to find a balance.
Understand, and I apologize, I don't know what that is. I would be the first to admit I'm not a bus expert, but I will say that in the last 6 months, we've become a lot smarter. So we're happy to continue whatever dialogue, to learn what we can. We're also willing to adjust bell schedules. We've even discussed having some of our staff serve as the assistant on the bus to help reduce costs in any way we can. I mean, we're open to whatever it is. We'd love to work together towards a solution that works both ways.
I agree.
Mr. Davis, didn't you say you had some companies reach out to you?
Right, we have,
Additional.
there are several companies that reached out. One is Zoom, another is American Logistics Corporation, and there's a third one, which I cannot remember off the top of my head now, that are willing to look at those students to see if they can take on that transportation. Okay. And the cost will come into factor. If you can get, like Ms. Miller said, if they could have a hub stop where they're picking up multiple students at one time, the cost is significantly less than if they're going door to door and picking up students. So those contractors, which I actually spoke with last week, are anxious to look at where the students are. If we could create hub stops, they may be able to do it and do it in a fashion where the students would come into your school quicker than what we're doing right now, and also at a rate that's a lot less than going door to door picking up from them.
Ms. Miller and Ms. Fields.
I just, for the record, we pick up students that statute does not require us to pick up right now, and we don't know what that expense is. So I don't want the public to think this is the only operating that we're doing outside of statute. Right. And these students are on buses. These aren't separate buses. These aren't individual buses. They're riding with a our center school buses mostly. Is that what we're using?
We're a combination of buses that.
Okay. So they're not like
just center
actually,
school buses,
but it's not, we're already pairing them up with students. They're not getting on their own single Polk County / Achievement Academy bus.
No.
Okay, because the public doesn't understand how that works.
Right.
So I'm just now, what you just shared is interesting. I don't know if Student Academy needs more time to look at those options. That's probably what we need to discuss. Because if we're gonna go by statute, then we're running magnet schools. The cost, I would like to see this broken down one day, which has nothing to do with our conversation. I don't wanna be SB and run way out, but,
Sorry.
but I would like to see the money and the dollars and the manpower of running these magnet buses, because that, unfortunately, if we're just gonna talk dollars and not talk, you know, the right thing to do or responsible thing to do, is draining this district. And so, maybe another day we can talk about that, but for the children who are not similar, who are not typical functioning, they're not able to get on any other, you know, these are the most vulnerable kids, so I think we should have time to be able to help work with them for a solution and not just cut them off like we would do, no offense to the other charter schools, with students who could walk in the front door of one of our public schools with no additional services and not, you know, and be prepared. These students will not. So if we lose them, what's gonna happen when they come into our pre-K, our kindergarten programs and are tested, like you're gonna see this ripple effect, so that's what I'm trying to. Other than it's the right thing to do and it's a moral obligation to take care of the most vulnerable, I'm worried about the long term, what it looks like if they're not prepared when they get to us.
And I actually asked Dr. Steinke if they lost students, could they, I'm not sure. If they had the services to handle those students, if for some reason that was a ripple effect where they started transportation of their own, couldn't do all of the students, and they lost, say, 20 students, and I believe you told me yes.
Yeah, technically we would be able to serve them. I mean, it'd be difficult.
We do not serve those students in a medical therapeutic model in the public system. I mean, I'm sorry, we know that, it's an educable model.
They are students with disabilities
Right.
that have requirement for
Right.
services and therapies that
Right.
we are required legally at pre-K age to provide. So
Right.
we would find a way to do it.
But it's not equal to what they're currently getting. Have you visited Achievement Academy?
Yes,
It's not
ma'am, I
equal to what we provide. That's the difference.
We would find a way to provide what they need if they enrolled in our schools. They leave there and come to our pre-K units already.
Right, right. And we would be compliance-based with statute, not a medical model of therapy and education.
And also, I think if we, you know, as I was saying, the 60 students that we have slotted for transportation, although we only counted 52 in October, which is where we get the funding, but we had 60 slotted, that would take 6 buses. If we did something with bell schedules if they did something with their bell schedules where they could use those buses at each of their sites, then that could be possibly 3 buses doing all 3 of their sites, kind of like we do with our schools, a high school, elementary, and a middle. They could do that with Lakeland, Bartow, and Winter Haven. So that cost go down, and the more students that you transport, the more funding that you will receive from the state. And there's not a charter school or a school district in the state of Florida that's getting 100% funding from the state. I mean, at all. And I'd say we're one of a large school district transporting close to 50,000 students, and you know, we receive a decent portion compared to other districts similar to our size and geographical area. So we're running as efficiently as possible. But it's never, I want to make that clear, it's never been about the dollars at all. It's just the resources and the concerns that have been brought up through our staff, through area managers and drivers, and now looking at possible mandates to transport more students with no funding or minimal funding is going to be something that we all have to worry about.
Ms. Fields, then Ms. Townsend, then Mr. Wilson.
Well, I have a couple of things. Wes, what did you say about the bill? You said something.
I just said I looked at it and it did not appear that there was a separate funding provision in it. Transportation is typically funded in part through FTE,
Right.
but there's no, I didn't see any language in it that provided any funding in addition to that.
Thank you. I think I'm kind of like Ms. Cunningham. I was under the impression that more time was needed in order to be able to do their own transportation. So now, you know, that's not the situation. So my question to the superintendent is there staff that can get with the Achievement Academy staff and look at what the options are, and then come back to us with the report, and then we would know about this bill in May, and then whether or not that's going to impact us as it relates to the excessive amount of buses or new buses that we would have to purchase. But I'll say this, and Lord knows I mean no offense, because as I said earlier, I respect the work that the Achievement Academy do in our community. But having a year to work on transportation, that was something that we were able and willing to do. And I think at some point in time, if they can't do their own transportation, then we're going to have to make a decision on whether or not we're going to allow our staff to continue to transport, or if we're going to come with a timeline when we can no longer do it. I think that is going to be the final decision that we're going to have to make.
And Ms. Hills, to answer your question, I was going to have, after the discussion, ask Mr. Davis to get with them to talk about, especially since we have those providers that are out there that have reached out to him and different options, and see if they can work through some of those, and see if some of those scenarios, like you brought up the 3 stops, will work for them, to have them to sit down and try to work through that together. After we had the discussion, that was going to be my recommendation from Mr. Davis, to get with them at that point. So I know we had Mr. Townsend and Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, I just don't think this discussion has gotten specific enough until today. You know, that you identified what the benefit is to the remainder of the kids in the system. I think Mrs. Miller's point about all the other kids we're transporting as well that don't necessarily need to be transported by statute, I think that's an important consideration. I also think my consideration of that this is a charter that's not like the rest of the charters, and I don't think I think we also ought to be clamoring for Tallahassee to provide funding for them. Like, I think that's something that they very well should do, and we should advocate for that on their behalf. And I also hadn't heard about the contractors that, you know, and I think, you know, for Achievement Academy and John, I think you hear the board wanting to hear what you're doing. Like, have you scoured your folks to see who absolutely needs it? Like, who would, like, do you have a number of who would no longer come to the school? Who could no longer come to the school if transportation wasn't provided? You know, like what are specific changes you're prepared to make? I think the status quo for both of us is pretty untenable long term. I'm with everybody else. I think it would be very hard to just continue this way in perpetuity. But I'm certainly willing to give a lot of consideration and funding to continue what you provide. I just think we all need to get down to real brass tacks instead of being general.
Billy, if I may, please. I was remiss in not introducing Cindy Parker Pearson, who is our principal, and she has some of the numbers that you're asking about. If you'd like to.
We can, in our discussion.
In your discussion.
Now or later.
In discussion.
Have your discussion, right?
Right.
If you want to share it with the board,
Sure.
email, whatever, that's fine.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Wilson?
Well, first I'm going to respectfully disagree with Mr. Davis, and that it's not the dollars. I understand it may not be the dollars as it relates to the transportation, but it is the dollars. It's the dollars in terms of the paras that they need and the bus drivers that they need, right? So, and let me say this, Mr. Burton, I'm in agreement with Mr. Townsend. I think this is one of the things, one of the instances where we could make an exception, and probably should make an exception because of the nature of your school, what you're doing for district. But in the bigger picture, as I think about this, the reason we find ourselves in this dilemma is because our state legislators, as well-intended as they are, aren't thinking everything through. They're not thinking through the financial implications of these unfunded mandates. And I'm all about school choice. Let me be clear about that. But there's a cost involved. You have to transport those students, right, when you talk about school choice. And it's very costly, and it needs to be funded. And it's not being funded from the state. And that's where we find ourselves in this very difficult situation. And so I say to my friends in Tallahassee, my friends who are state legislators, if you think that we're bloated and we have a lot of money, please send your best accountants. We'll open up our books. Beg you to do that. What you're going to find is that's not the case. And it's really not fair. These are very vulnerable children. They're our children. They're our state legislators' children. They're children we need to be taking care of. And it's not appropriate for this school district to shoulder that entire burden. The state of Florida has to take that into consideration, understand that no matter what their intent is, good, bad, or otherwise, there are children, there are human beings involved here, and they have to step up to the plate. So every time they're passing legislation, they need to consider that. They need to consider the cost of that legislation, and they have to stop saddling us with unfunded mandates. It's just not fair to the kids in our community. And so they have to assume some of that responsibility, and I think that's an important part of this discussion.
Mr. Wilson, I want to clarify, eliminating the transportation for Achievement Academy was never about funding. That was my intent to say, not that money doesn't matter, it clearly does. That was never the point. Okay. So I just want to make that clear.
No, I understand completely, but my friends in Tallahassee won't understand that. As soon as you say it's not about the money, they're going to say, wait, you have your transportation person saying it's not about money. So I wanted to clarify that from that perspective.
I was just going to say there's one particular legislator in Tallahassee who might be looking for an opportunity to be a champion for education these days. Maybe you should give her a call. I'll follow up with you on that if you want.
Any other questions? Okay, so Ms. Deja, you and Mr. Burton. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we'll transition into the next item, which will be the Mr. Warren. He'll transition next. So it'll take 15 minutes. Okay, so we're going to continue, and we are now on item 5, which is the salary and contract negotiation 2019-2020. Mr. Warren.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. He'll be here shortly.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. We're here to provide you an executive summary and good news relative to the ESP and the paraeducator contract negotiations. I know in the late hour of the afternoon, I want to be timely and conscious of your time. We're pleased to recommend this afternoon, however, that we have approval of the attached collectively bargained tentative agreements for 1920 salaries and the 2020 health plan and contract language following the ratification for paraeducators and ESP. The PEA represents approximately 8,931 employees, 6,781 of those teachers, 1,601 of those paraeducators, 549 ESP. December 17th, there was a union ratification vote of 545 votes cast in the paraeducator bargaining unit. 411 of those were to approve and 134 to reject, so it passed with more than a majority for paraeducators. In the ESP unit, 347 votes were cast, 236 approved, 111 rejected, and again, more than the 50% for a pass. In the teacher contract, we are still actively negotiating. That was not ratified. There was 1,774 votes cast, 887 approved, and exactly 887 rejected. We're currently still at the table negotiating. We've been back to the table once, and we're scheduled to be back February 5th again to continue negotiations in those areas.
In terms of the contracts, between the February and October 2019, the self-funded health insurance plan for the 2020 calendar year was jointly negotiated with ASME and PEA employee groups. And also as part of the package agreement, there will be no premium increases for plan design changes to the 2020 health plan, and that would be January 1 through December 31st, 2020. On July 1st, 2019, the school board increased its monthly contribution to the self-funded employee health plan for active employees from $654 to $727, both including a $40 clinic assessment, and monthly premiums for spousal and dependent health coverage are unchanged for the next plan year. And you have attached the full PEA contracts that were open for negotiations and a summary by bullets of the changes. As it was an open book, there were specific articles that were opened up, language changes that were adjusted, title changes and otherwise. I'm happy to go through article by article and summary for you, but in the interest of time, wanted to provide an overview of the executive summary and maybe take questions from it this time.
For the record, what is the amount of money that we put into the self-funded insurance plan in order to keep everybody whole and not raise premiums? Is that you?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's Mr.
thank you.
$9 and $10 million.
Excuse me?
Between $9 and $10 million. I'll get you the exact.
There is
Yeah, I'd like to know, I know it was somewhere in there, but I can't remember what I read.
There's a financial impact chart.
Yes, sir.
If I can reference it, Mr. Bryant. For paraeducators, the benefits for paraeducators is at a value of $5,395,000. And for educational support personnel, the benefits are at $2,353,000.
So put those
and that's
together.
a total of $7,749,000. I'm sorry? Yes, that is a chart that's, I'm still referencing the summary, and I'm on page 2 of 13.
Okay.
2 of 13.
Thank you.
Ms. Fortin?
Ms. Fortin?
Well,
here it is.
I think we know where I'm going to go with this. I'm not. I don't think we can pay anybody enough. I don't understand why we can't put steps at the start of the budget. And I have here a pay stub from one of our para specifics whose husband is a former student of mine. He sent it to me, and I asked him permission. She has actually $75.78 in deductions from her paycheck, and she brings home $822.47. I want that to sink in to everybody. That's what that woman lives on with 3 kids, her and her husband. Thank God he works for Publix. $822.47. She has a gross of $1,259.33. That's all I'm going to say about it before I vote no.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let me make a comment, and it may not be appropriate here, but I know that not everybody ratified the contract language, and that is something that concerns me. I am in the process of having discussions regarding that, and I simply want to be on record of saying to our team, we are one team, PEA, school board. We're trying to do what's best for the next group of people, which is teachers. I'm underneath the impression that while money is important, Ms. Fortney, yes, there are some other conditions that need to be looked at in order to reach ratification for this year so that we can move on. Because I will tell you, I am not going to approve a balanced budget without raises for next year. And maybe this isn't the time, but it gets to the point that we have to do something. And as she said, very poignantly, I'd like to see those raises, and regardless of the amount, there has to be an amount factored into us when you bring us that budget for all employees, not just one group, because we all know this. I mean, we've preached it for years. everybody deserves to get an increase because the cost of living continues to go up. I don't know how we do it. I'm not a bean counter, but I rely on those that know way more than I do to come up with ways to do that. And I strategically want us to do that, and I want us to go into the bargaining table next week and be very open and look at ways that we can improve teacher working conditions. And that sounds, and I don't mean that negative, I just mean things that we can do to help us, because I want this ratified ASAP so that we can move on as a district, begin to heal, because you're going to hear it tonight for those of you that are coming. I already know in my heart what a lot of comments are going to be. We have to do better. And I know Rob needs new buses and different, I get all that, but we've got to find a way. And if we can't pay, because we've kept, that's why I asked you that number, we've sunk in eight and almost $9 million if you add the two together, $7.7 million and change. The next step now is to say, okay, teachers, what can we do? And I understand that hopefully there's going to be some ways that don't involve monetary contributions that's going to get us to the place that we need to be. And that's very near and dear to my heart, and I just felt like this was probably the time to say it. So thank you in advance for all you all can do to make some of that happen so we can move forward as a district.
Thank you. And to echo that remark, we're actively at the table.
Okay.
We're anticipatory of the time that we'll share together,
Yes.
February 5th.
Okay.
And we have been actively, working on articles and,
Perfect.
and having what is negotiation.
Yes.
So, the machine is in motion and
Okay,
working
great.
between both parties.
Thank you. Thank you for being open-minded and trying to help us move forward.
Yes,
Mr. Wilson? Ms. Miller?
I just want to, I have a letter from a teacher that couldn't make it tonight, and just what Ms. Cunningham is saying, we have got to, if we're not going to give them dollars, we have to give them something. And I don't know that that's been the focus, and that's why they're back at the table. But as far as para salaries, I'm on the end of the spectrum that watch paras, do the work that CNAs get paid more to do. And so what she has said in the past, and what Ms. Fortney has said, we started talking about asking for money and doing our own referendum here. We need it. This is for a different time. We need an efficiency audit. As a new board member, when you give me a book this giant that I'm supposed to, read through I need to know. Right now, I don't know that I'm confident that we are efficient in every category. And so when these subjects come up, I need to understand that we are. And so before we go to a referendum and before we go telling people we don't have money, I would like to see a plan to do that long term, which will cost money to do. But we've got to do something. We just can't come back to these people and say, sorry, we don't have it. I can't be assured that we don't.
Mr. Wilson?
Well, I'm going to echo those comments as well, Ms. Cunningham's comments. We should have a contract now, and we don't. And that's, I think, concerning to me. We may not be able to offer money. I think we could offer something, but even if we can't offer money, there are things we can do, things we can offer. We should be, in my opinion, negotiating. I don't get the sense that that's what's happening. And I think I agree with Ms. Cunningham. I think that we're going to hear that tonight. So it's not all about the money. There are other things we can do to make the contract acceptable to our teachers. So I say this because you're here representing HR, right?
Yes.
We have to find a way to make that happen. Thank you.
Ms. Fortney?
Well, having set in on some of the negotiations, I think it would help if the decision makers were present for those negotiations instead of having to. It seems like every time I'm there, I'm sitting there on my phone because there's nothing going, no negotiating happening. Everybody's it's presenting. It's more of a presentation. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
But there are a lot of free things we could do.
Thank you, Mr. Warren.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
The next item is going to be set net funds, and we have Dr. Sankey coming for us with that one.
So I'm just here to share that we recently were approved for another one-time allocation of $307,000 for use with our mental health work. It can only be used for to support development, training, curriculum, and technical assistance or activities in the areas of mental health, substance abuse, child trafficking awareness, family and youth mental health education. So on the attachment that you received, you could see how we, the team had decided to divide out those funds between now and June 30th. It was approved by the DOE and USF, who's our partner with this. So we're just asking for your approval to move it forward. The faster we can spend it, the more we can make sure that we utilize all $307,000. And ideally, this is going to help offset some of our other mental health funds that do roll over into the next school year.
That was my question.
And these funds have to be spent by June 30
Yes, ma'am.
of this year. Okay, Ms. Miller?
What are, is this gonna go to the training of teachers that we're doing in mental health, that we already had a push to? I don't know what we're spending.
It'll be a little bit of both. Some of it will be that we have a series of youth mental health first aid trainings scheduled throughout the year that the teachers actually attend.
Right.
The 5 per school every year. So some of it's devoted to some more of those sessions. Some of it's devoted to the trainers of those sessions to keep them trained and add more. Some of it's to expand some of our substance abuse trainings. There's a variety of things.
Will we see a report on how this money was spent?
Ultimately, what you're seeing in the proposal of the grant is it has to be. That's how we.
Okay.
That's the only way it's approved by DOE.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Courtney?
Can you go to page 3, Dr. Stone? I had a question there.
My pages aren't numbered, but if you tell me what it.
Okay, hang on.
The application
Appendix A,
The application.
Senate funding application.
Okay, page 3 of it?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just curious, for, again, the public, on the salaries, PBIS training,
Yes.
district coordinator, is that some of the funds that you are talking about that roll over that we could use this for, or?
So our current mental health allocation that we're using that's funding our mental health facilitator,
Right.
some of our behavior stuff, that money does roll over into the next school year.
Right.
So whatever $307,000 we're spending out of it right now for a lot of these activities, we'll be able to use this money instead. So that $307,000 can be used.
Right, so the 86,972 over there.
We'd be saving $86,000 out of the
That's what
current
I'm
mental
trying
health.
to get at.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then right below it, same thing, which, you know, that had to catch my eye right there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, all of this.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Wonderful,
you.
thank you.
Okay. And the last discussion item we have today is we're going to have Ms. Maddie Freed with the Head Start report.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm so glad you're smiling. As you already probably know, this is Carrie Bartland. She's our new Director of Head Start, sitting in our preschool programs department. And thank you for the opportunity to share. As you know, the federal government requires that we give information to you on a regular basis, and I don't think we've been here recently, so coming to see your happy faces is really great. The agenda today is mainly focused in on 4 IMs, which are information memorandums. I think that would be like the Department of Ed sending down a white paper saying this is how you'll run something, okay? This is the feds on our AFC, the Agency for Children and Administration of for Children and Families. That's how they send us new rules. You already have the update on our funds. That sounds great. And you know that we are struggling, as we have all school year, on hiring staff, appropriate certified staff for positions. It's been a challenge. and we are moving forward in meeting our requirement for the 10% of children with identified disabilities sitting in fully included classrooms with us. So those are our challenges right now. I want to call attention to you, if you will, to one of the IMs is basically reminding us that we have new CAMs, new CANs. Those are, let me see, common accounting numbers, and those are the same numbers everybody else has to use when they're using a federal grant. So you saw that, and you probably already saw about the capital leases. We do not have any capital leases. We do have a rental agreement, and that rental agreement will come up again the next time we talk. And then we have class, which is another IM from the Administration of Children and Family. One of the ways the district, as the grantee, can lose the grant is that 10% of the nation's grantees in Head Start rank X on their scores, on their class. That's the classroom assessment screening system. And that if we are ranked in that lowest 10%, we lose the grant. We have to recompete. The problem with that is, and we are lobbying hard to have that changed, the problem with that is if everyone in the nation ranks a 7 or a 6 point, way to go, a 6.95, which is only, you know, just a few points away from perfect at a 7, and we rank a 6.94, we're in the lowest 10%, we lose our grant. So it's not saying, are you meeting standard? It's saying there's a dead cut date time, a cut line. And so our agency, our Head Start Association for Region 4, which is the southern region, and the National Association for Head Start has been lobbying hard to have that move to have more of a growth model instead of a hard cut line. That information can be found in the information memorandum that I submitted on this information time. The last piece is about something that's near and dear to my heart. It's kind of exciting. We have had a very limited opportunity to serve children in kinship care, in homeless, in economically at-risk families, in terms of not being in their own home but being cared for by another family member, and also foster care. We had very limited, fine definition, and we found it difficult to service those children. As of 9/30/2019, those definitions have been opened up. We now have the opportunity and the legal support to broaden our service to children high at risk who are not being cared for in their own home or with their own families. I think that's it.
Are there any questions? Mr. Townsend?
Are we in jeopardy of being in the bottom 10%?
Always.
Well, I mean, like,
How close are we?
Are we currently?
Using the 2018 scores, we were assessed, they came and did our class of observation last January, so we had to wait for the calendar year to end to know where the 10% were. Using the 2018 scores, we were fine. But those scores, you know, were in a different pool with the 2019. We have good scores, but we don't know. Like she said, it's a 1 to 7 scale. We could be a 6.99 and the cut score is a 6.998. And we automatically fall into DRS and have to compete again to have
Is there any reason to expect that this year? I mean, are you, or is this just
Are we nervous?
A perennial thing?
I had a phone call. Another way you can get DRS is you're chosen to go into recompete. I think it's a willy-nilly kind of thing. And our phone call with our Region 4 program specialist the other day, during that call, she talked about, you know, the difference between applying for the position, applying for the grant without recompete or with recompete. That bothered me that she talked about that, but I have no hard evidence, sir, that that will occur.
We did a federal audit last February, the focus area 2, and we passed that. That was something else that would put you into non-compete and have to compete against or compete, not non-compete. And we passed that, so it's just a numbers and a weighting thing now.
And I don't know if she was just sharing to share or sharing to scare me.
She will be here February 25th through 27th, and she is asked, I'll be taking her to the majority of our sites. She'll attend our policy council meeting on February 27th. Ms. Fortney will be there as well. She'll be talking to parents, staff, just kind of watching everything that we do.
Is any of that data lag data?
Pardon?
Is any of it lag data?
Well,
some of it?
I think all.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to say.
You know, but yes, yes.
Okay.
I don't, since it is in federal stat, it's at the FAC, so Federal Administrative Code, I just don't know how to change that policy except for the associations, the region associations, to continue to lobby hard to make it a growth model and not a cut score.
Okay, Ms. Fortney?
I want to thank publicly for y'all meeting with me the other day and explaining so much information and all you do, because I truly believe that everything starts right where you're working. And I believe it was in November 13th, I think I went with you to all of my schools that had the, and the folks in there are making less than the paycheck I just showed you, that are working with our, again, vulnerable, needy children. And usually, what I noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I guess it would depend on the campuses, but a lot of those kids are stuck out in the portables, like they're the furthest away from everything. And there was one portable that only had like one little computer. I feel like taking this one over there to them. And they have skills they have to master on that. They just don't have the, I wish we could solve that problem. I know, don't get started on that, but it is the hoop you have to jump through. And the other thing I'd like for you to explain to the public is the rental agreements. I think you told me you had 2 of them. I would hope that we could work to solve some of that. And how much money would that save us, basically, or you? Us, Ms. Cunningham.
The grant. The grant currently rents 2 facilities, the Wilfred Smith Building in Winter Haven and the Haines City Community Center in Haines City. The beauty of having those 2 community centers is that they are in the heart of the community, and we're able to service families, and it's a little less tense, if you will, than walking onto a school campus for many people. The drawback, and there are several, but one of the major drawbacks is the staff at those sites are not able to have all the supports that one would have if they were at an elementary school. The school board does indeed pay for a guardian to be at each site, and for that we are very grateful. There's no LPN on campus, so our health nurses must ensure that there's another kind of individual health care plan for our students. Our foods are all satellited in. That's a cost to the system. What else? Custodial services.
We also don't have an administrator on site.
That was my biggest.
So those 5 or 6 issues do cause us concern. We have been very fortunate that our staff and the support systems have never yielded a negative impact there, However, as time moves on and we see the aging building at the Haines City Head Start, I'm very concerned with that building. I think I shared with you earlier, Ms. Cunningham, the air conditioning system, the HVAC system has to be completely redone, and with that means all the ductwork and some of the walls in the building. We've had several times where we've had to have mold abatement in the building. It's different when you're on a off-campus location and not having the surrounding supports. It's just different. And I am very concerned for our staff and our children. Again, we've been talking about the youngest children, and they are part of that team. Our Head Start children are 3 and 4 years of age.
Ms. Miller, then over to Ms. Reynolds.
Wes might have, since we've been talking about proposed legislation and watching the bills go through the beginning session now, the one about grading pre-K and assigning letter grades and standardized testing to our pre-K students, do you want to share your thoughts on what that would look like for your students? Because here are mine. The most vulnerable, the students with disabilities, the students that are homeless, the students that are low income, socioeconomic, no parent engagement. Just like in a regular setting, those are the most difficult to pull the grades from. And we've seen in a regular setting how that can affect the population of the classrooms, of what it looks like, and what schools they can attend. I'm assuming it will be the same in pre-K if that's what we start doing. And it will isolate students who need the most supports. But that might just be my own opinion. So I'd like to hear from people that work in pre-K how you think that would affect your program.
Well, currently, right now, they base our readiness rate using the STAR EL program. The children are tested within the first 30 days of their kindergarten year. We're the only grade level that the children are not tested while they're with us. So they finish pre-K, they go home for the summer, they end up at a school on the other side of town because they can go any Head Start, any BPK, any Title I, that there's no zoning. And then they are tested within the first 30 days, kids who may not have had an opportunity to be on the computer. The readiness rates, I've looked at the preliminary rates. They were out last month. The final rates are supposed to be out the first week of February. Looks like out of my 23 Head Start sites, I have 16 who are going to be below the 60% cutoff score. I've submitted 2 disputes to dispute with the data because I found a couple of errors. So hopefully that once it's approved, I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. That number will reduce to 14 out of my 23 Head Start sites, which is 55 classrooms. On the Title I side, which is not Head Start, Title I grant-funded programs, out of the 23 sites, there's 6 that are below. And out of my VPK, which is straight VPK with CDAT teachers with they go for 3 a.m. hours or 3 p.m. hours that the parents pay for the extended day. I have 2 out of 21 that are below the cut score.
Do supports look different with Title I? I'm assuming there's more money to provide technology. Do the supports look different between the programs, is what you're seeing? Or is it just?
Let me field that. Title I pays for the teacher. There are no other supports.
So they're not providing technology or any other? And this bill would not bring money for that. It would just bring money to grade, which is the problem, because we have no money to pass along.
Lisa, I find, and this is my thoughts after 45 years of being hanging around this joint. Okay, so what I find is that the school itself will have a wonderful program, but the letter grade that's attached will be a stigma and not a support to the families around the school. I hear all the time parents coming in and saying, I don't want to go to that school. They have a C. I want to go to an A school. And I'm thinking, I know those classrooms.
Right.
That grade doesn't really share the need. However, the biggest deal is, are the schools and the private providers of VPK, because that's what the law is all about, are those VPK rules going to drive private providers of service and public schools to say, we no longer want the most vulnerable, the lowest, we want the children who can probably pass these scores, and will our emphasis become servicing children who really don't need us? We at Polk County Schools have long said our goal is to serve the neediest of the needy. And I wonder, is this legislation going to drive us away, not only me, but all providers of VPK services? Could you imagine the little mom and pop shop that has their child care down the road, and they're gonna look at this child coming in and they can see that he has lots of needs, but they're gonna say, I'm sorry, Johnny Lunch Bucket, we really don't want you in our school. We wanna take, Rosie Dozy, who you know is gonna make 100, while Johnny Lunch Bucket's gonna make a 40.
You've just described what we're already doing with academic contracts in schools and things of that nature. So I get it, but does the public get it is the question.
Well, I guess that's why I'm saying it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
How many classrooms do we have at that Winter Haven campus?
2 Head Start classrooms and 1 Florida First Start campus. At Haines City, we have 5 Head Start units, and of course, at every location that has a Head Start, we must have a family engagement.
Is there any, have we looked at schools nearby to see if there may be a school site that those could be housed on, or is that a conversation?
Michelle Townley, John Hill, and I are talking about that tomorrow.
Okay.
So if you have any magic wands or fairy dust,
okay, I'll send them your way.
Ms. Fields?
This was one of my areas that I wanted to have a work session on.
We have it noted.
That you need to have more information, you have more time to discuss.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, and Madam Chair, that ends my discussion portion, unless there are questions about items 7 and 8, which are all normal financial statements and quarterly.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you.
Let's do this. Let's go through our agenda study quickly. Does anybody have any questions regarding items C1 through C9? C1 through C9. Seeing none, let's move on to C10, Business Services, Bid Recommendations, C10 through C25. C10 through C25. Do you have your hand up, sir?
Oh, I did, yes.
I'm sorry, yes, go
That's
ahead.
okay. Well, I'm assuming all of these are on our strategic project plan. Is there a reason to believe otherwise?
Which ones? The
All
contract
of the, yeah, all the
selections?
Yeah, so this
Right.
is C15 through C,
Right.
really 28.
Yes.
So I'm assuming all those are on the project plan or part of the project plan?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
I imagine so.
Thank you.
All right.
I did have
Yes,
a
Ms.
question
Fordley?
for Ms. Usher on the stand ball. It would be C21.
Yep.
Did we get electricity out there for fans?
Yes.
Thank you. I
Ms. Mel?
appreciate you very much. Oh, hi, Ms.
Oh.
Usher.
Are you?
I'll email her. It's not, it's just something I needed a little more explanation on. It's fine.
Okay, all right. All right, then we have C26 through C34. Okay, moving on to our regular agenda items. We're going to take these one at a time. Our appointment to the Attendance Boundary Committee. I understand Ms. Sarah Beth Reynolds is appointing Ms. Blocker. Would you like to say something tonight when the time comes after we have a first and a second? Did you want to read her community input or anything like that? You want to do that? Okay. Okay, under R36, we have our employee contracts for Ms. Matthews and Mr. Bridges. I would like to take those obviously individually. I think everybody knows we've had a change on Mr. Bridges' contract. It was just a typo that I believe he caught. and has made appropriate copies if anybody needs it. It's just a typo of an extra word on a line that doesn't need to be there. I have extra copies here if anybody needs that before we go. And it should have been uploaded, is that correct? To the e-agenda with the revision on there. All right, let me pass that out. Ms. Fortney, you need a new copy of that?
Please.
Do I have those?
I don't need it
does.
right this second.
You don't? Well,
No.
if she can pass it out, anybody that needs that. There was one word, the word months was omitted.
Oh.
The word months, M-O-N-T-H-S. It should have been, if he chooses to terminate his relationship with the board, he has to give 60 days notice, and it accidentally still had the word months there. So I believe, is that correct, Mr. Bridges?
Yes,
You have
ma'am.
removed that one word. Okay.
For some reason, when we
I
did the
know.
accept changes, that one didn't accept.
I know, and I just, whatever, so thank you for getting that corrected for tonight, and then it's been uploaded, correct, Ms. Winchester?
Yes, ma'am.
So that the correct contract is online for folks to, right, okay. And I do want to say there, we're going to be taking those individually, as I indicated, one employee at a time. I do ask the board, we are talking about people's lives with these contracts. So I ask for you to take it extremely seriously, and I ask that any comments that you make be positive and constructive, because we are obviously on live television, and I just hope, I'm going to tell you now as your board chair, I support both of these individuals, and will be voting accordingly, because I feel they are exemplary individuals. They work so hard on behalf of this district. We each have areas that we have to have growth, an opportunity for growth, and I think those can be addressed individually. But I just feel that with their contracts, this is going to be a 3-year contract, so everybody's clear, beginning in our new fiscal year, which is July 1 of 2020, and it'll run for 3 more years. And then if at any time, I'm sure y'all have read it, but let me just paraphrase, if at any time we as the board collectively are not happy about either of their performances, it is up to the board to take action. And that can be done through this governing body. So, and the fact that these contracts are only coming up for this renewal, if you will, 4 months before the end of the contract is disturbing to me, but it is what it is. So I would like your support in supporting these 2 employees who work very hard for us. And I'm not saying either person is perfect, because none of us are, but I really feel that they do a great job, and I'm hoping, you know, that we can get to a point, and we sort of touched on it at our last meeting, to start to give Mr. Bridges some help in that office. If any of you have not had a chance to print out that litigation report, it's going to be mind-boggling for you to read and fathom the amount of work that goes through his office. Just in case you haven't had a chance to review it, it's pages and pages and pages of ongoing litigation. And if you've not had a chance to review it and to see the status and so forth, I would ask the board members to do that at your earliest convenience, because they've got a lot going on in our legal department. In addition to that, with Ms. Matthews, she has been absolutely outstanding in the years that I've known her. Once again, does above and beyond. We went from doing schools, a third of our schools every year, to turning around and saying, you know what, we need to do more than that to ensure that the funds and stuff that go in and out of our school accounts are being accounted for. So with the changeover in her office, I mean, everybody's got a lot going on. So I think the world of both individuals, their dedication, and does anybody like to, I see some hands up. Yes, Ms. Miller.
I just, as a new board member, and I had mentioned to Wes, I like you said, the 4 months out, I'm concerned that this wasn't addressed a lot earlier. And the board has changed. There's a lot of, you have board members that are very engaged in what's going on as far as they were privately engaged before they got on the board, like myself or Mrs. Fortney, who'd been in the classroom for 30 years. And I just, and I think working with Wes individually, I can tell you, I've just been on the fence about a lot of it. 21 years in this district, I've worked with him outside of the board. I've always respected his position. I need to be affirmed that if he needs supports, we're gonna arrange that for him, because it's going to be, I need more progressive work out of that office. We had a policy come through that the state, we waited on to act until the state was gonna take funding from us, and the board did not know that. Like, I think I would like to see a more progressive approach to board communication, and not that you're just, and with what we're dealing with the DOE coming down, it's a very different day in education. The bills up now are dismantling what we do here, and I think that we need to be apprised, and that's probably gonna be working with both Wendy and Wes to do that. But we've got to work in a progressive stance with that and not be retroactive. We can't let things pass and then tell the public, we're sorry, Tallahassee did this to you. I would really like to open that communication, and even if we put it on the agenda, to have more conversation about what's happening, our legal requirements and responsibilities to it, because we cannot be passive in that nature at all.
Is that something then that we could add to our list of discussion items as we move forward to an extended work session?
Well, you know, we were adding it to the agenda, and I think it got confused that we were trying to rewrite our actual platform, when I think it just needs to be, the discussion needs to be open at that time, so we can talk about the legal, what would that require from us legally?
Right.
What would that
How would we
require
do that?
from, you know, I think we need to make that part of our ongoing discussion, and not to change our platform, but to be apprised of what's coming, either statute changes from DOE or actual legislation.
So that might be a Wendy /
Yes.
Mr. Bridges conversation.
I think so.
I think that warrants one of those afternoon discussions that we've talked about. I think
I
that's
have too many on the list though, so.
We do, well, we'll manage that. I'm gonna try to sneak some in. It's been
Okay.
very busy lately, but if I can sneak some in, I don't mean to say, like, today would have been great to add. We kind of added the Achievement Academy very quickly.
Right.
That really wasn't on the list, but to me, that was addressing a need. So if I can sneak a few in on regular board meeting days in our work session, I'm gonna try to do that, sit with superintendent and try to make that work. But I think that would be a great thing moving forward. So,
I would enjoy that discussion.
okay, sir, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fortney?
Going off what Ms. Miller said, I think also that discussion would help us, and I hate to use the word sell, but explain to the public the monetary effect. And even when I met up with our state legislators this past week, they wanted to know the dollar amount, and as a talking point. You know, I go back to transportation. We get 47 and it costs us 68. You know, that kind of thing. Those factoids need to come out, and we're getting ready to maybe go with the under a mile. That would be monetarily, how would that affect us? Right, exactly, and I think that needs to be a discussion sooner rather than later. And Ms. Cunningham, you said the report you just held up, the litigation report?
Yes.
Was that sent on November 3rd? Or has there been one since then?
No, that's the one I printed.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Is a lot of that is contracted out?
Some is, but it's managing those contracts as well.
Yeah, I know.
And knowing who's on what page and where do you go next.
Right, I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, yeah, that's the last one I think I have.
That's why I privately and publicly supported both Wes and Carol, because I'm all about consistency.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm talking about from the time I opened the door to the time the kids leave, we did it the same way. You know, so there was no confusion.
Nothing.
And, you know, and I appreciate you both very much. And I know you changed your contract, and I appreciate that,
Yes.
Ms. Fields. And I agreed that, you know, those are the kinds of things, though, that we need to look at with all our employees.
Correct. And yes, the date on this is Monday, November 4th.
Okay.
Yes,
All
so
right.
we have the same exact report. I have not seen
I just want to make
one
sure I didn't
since.
miss something, because
No,
that's
sir.
not in my DNA.
No, ma'am, you got it. Okay, so,
I have some comments.
oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Fields.
I wanted to thank Ms. Matthews for going back and removing the increase. I appreciate that. And I wanted to publicly say that I will be supporting both of the contracts tonight. I think that we're very blessed to have Mr. Bridges and Ms. Matthews on staff. And improvements can be made, all of us can improve. And we have to chew at it a little bit at a time. And so just wanted to publicly make sure everyone knows that Ms. Matthews did retract her salary increase, so nobody will have received an increase for this current year.
Yes. Go ahead. Mr. Wilson?
Well, let me offer this. I too am very grateful and appreciative of the services they provided. You know, I've heard some comments about us not having something in place, and I want to address that. The conversation we just had about providing Mr. Bridges with additional help has nothing to do with his contract. So those are conversations we should have, but those were not things that would be negotiated into the contract. The reality is they both had 3-year contracts that had a special provision in them that, in my opinion, was a very valuable part of the contract to them that could have provided valuable benefits to them under certain circumstances. And I'm not sure that I could have, in good conscience, asked them to give that up. So there were only 2 real issues. One was the rule established by the state of Florida, which they both have agreed to now. And the second one was money. And I'm not sure that anybody was open to talking about money previously. I mean, we certainly could have done that, but that seems like something that would have been a little premature in my opinion. So I felt like the timing of this was exactly as it should have been. So yeah, I just want to go on record as having said that. I support both of them completely. And as I said, I couldn't in good conscience ask them to give up their prior contracts, and I'm not sure that either one of them was especially interested in doing that. I can't fault that. So certainly I will be supporting these, and I'm supporting anything else we want to do in the way of providing them with resources. I know Ms. Matthews has indicated she needs some additional help as well, so I think that is a conversation we need to have, and I'm fully supportive of that as well.
Which is what I forgot to mention, thank you, Mr. Wilson, about, you know, some help in her office and trying to pay those folks what they are worth as well eventually, because, you know, it's like, to me, throwing money down the drain when we train them, and I'm sure other department people can verify, and then they go work for somebody else because of the money issue. And that's everything from our bus drivers to the staff here at the district office. So just put that out there.
Thank you. And to address those 2 items, let's get through tonight and our contract approving of the new contracts, if that's the pleasure of the board. Once that is completed, then I'm going to reach out to Carol and Wes and ask that they provide us with information, kind of like you did your due diligence, on your responsibilities and salaries going forward. If you could do that as well as far as potential needs in each office. So if you'll kind of make a note of that, I would like to have that from you, if possible, by the February 11th work session. I think that's very important as we move forward, to know what the needs are, what the costs are, what would ideally help you. And it's something that I think the board has to round table to discuss what we can do and the timing. We have to be aware of it first, and then secondly, we have to know the costs associated with it and how you see it. So if you could provide that to me prior to the 11th, so I guess that would be the 10th, right? That would be Monday, February 10th, as we're going to be meeting on Tuesday, the 11th, for our work session. Okay, moving along with our items. The next item is for the Title III language grant to the tune of $1.3+ million. Does anyone question about that?
Will there be some kind of explanation for the public on what Title III is, or just gonna vote?
That's really up to you. If you have someone that, would you like someone to come to the podium and kind of give an overview of that grant? Pardon?
This is dealing with the ELLs, ESOL, so
Right.
if you want me to have Ann come forward, I can.
Okay.
Just someone to tell the public
Sure.
what title,
What's
all they
going
hear are
on.
title numbers, but they don't know what's
Really know
attached.
what they mean.
Right.
Okay, that's a great idea. So you are gonna call, who we're gonna call up?
Ann Everett.
Okay, trying to make notes here. Okay. Next is our Best and Brightest Teacher Recognition Award, R38. Any questions or comments on that?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is not, or this is what we discussed and.
It is.
Okay,
Mhm.
I just
Yes,
want to make
ma'am.
sure when I
It
read
is.
it, it
Yes.
looked the same, but.
With the calculation that we decided on option
Option
one
one.
is what they
Gotcha.
put in here. Is that correct? That's what I read. Okay. Next thing is R39, the Polk Education Association, salary and contract negotiations. How exciting. We've come to this point, and hopefully we'll be voting this in at another later date for our teachers. But any questions on the vote tonight? Well, we have all the people here. I think we kind of talked about it today, so thank you, Mr. Warren. And then R40 is school calendar. The revisions for the 2021 school calendar that was discussed at work session, I think it was last week. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to make a point, because I forgot to make it last week, that the last day of school is now in there as a half day so that people can plan, pending that we have enough hours. So I just wanted to say thank you to the team for making that in there so that schools and teachers and parents can plan more than a month in advance. So thank you.
Ms. Miller.
How, I thought of this after the last work session to avoid what we just had last month or this month. How concrete are these calendars? Because have we had discussion about making the day before session a half day or some kind of teacher work day to avoid what we just went through?
Very interesting.
That has to go back with the negotiation.
Sure.
With that, that's what
Okay.
it is, yeah.
So if that is decided, these could be amended?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Like we're doing with them.
Right.
Okay.
So to that note, Mr. Warren, would you be so kind to see that that recommendation moves forward, at least to be discussed in your upcoming discussions with PEA? Because that really, I mean, I think that's a great idea.
Thanks.
I'm not sure what can be done.
I know,
But
right.
Yeah, sitting back, I think that's great. So
if that's something that's done annually, which I understand it's done annually, I don't know if it always falls on that day before. Depends when session starts. There's a lot to go into it, so
Right.
anything that can be discussed. I just wanted to make sure it can be amended if it's something that they discuss.
Thank you for bringing that up. All right. All right, then there'll be a superintendent. There is no public hearing. Superintendent's report. Is there an attorney's report, Mr. Bridges? Is there an auditor's report, Ms. Matthews? Okay. And then we have our board members' reports tonight. Okay, so now I have a couple items we need to discuss. I'll be quick, and then we'll go round table. Master board training. As everybody knows, we had to cancel that last week, and so therefore we need to reschedule that. And I asked Susan if she could be so kind and get some dates from superintendent, and then reach out to FSBA and email us a couple of dates, or bring it back on the 11th if you'd like, where we can discuss it, get our calendars, and pick an actual date. Does that kind of work for everybody? Just a quick, just don't want to let it go. In full disclosure, I've been working with Kim Long and Polk Vision so that Chairman Braswell and I, our County Commission Chairman, can work together. I'd like to bring back something that we used to do, where we had an open forum and a get-together, and we'd sit as two groups in our county that run our county from government and from education, and do some presentations and things. And I talked to Ms. Bird about that. So I'm hoping that we can plan out a joint meeting. I'll be looking for your input as time goes on. That's why I'm planting the seed today. If there are things that you would like to hear either our county share with our employees, our staff share with the group as a whole that would benefit both, or if there's something that you would like to hear the county present to all of us so that we can work closely together and continue to bring those bonds of communication from both sides. So I don't have a date for you. Obviously, that's going to come before you because we're a governing body and we work together. But I did want you to be thinking, we're hoping to have it maybe sometime in the fall is kind of where we're at. So just be thinking of ideas of agenda items that you would like to hear either our district folk give presentations on. I know years ago you did it on impact fees and other different things through the years. Concurrency we did, all kinds of things. So we need to find agenda items that are relevant to where we are today and where we want to move forward with our county commissioners. So I wanted to let you know that was going on. Additionally, I know you're going to hear a lot of comments tonight, and I wanted to let you know that I'm excited to hear the folks speak. And I know one of the things is going to be about putting a referendum on the ballot in this coming November. So to that effect, I've already asked Superintendent, we're going to put a referendum discussion on the February 11th work session. I've asked Mr. Bridges to get me information, which I need pretty soon, all of us. I understand Ms. Yoakum is also putting together some important information, and I think we just need to sit around the table and make some decisions how we want to move forward. So if you can make sure that you're here on the 11th, because I think that should be a very interesting discussion. And I know we're going to hear about it tonight, so I want to let you know, trying to be proactive and get an agenda. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure are we talking about what we've already discussed? Because the teachers tonight might not know that, and I don't want to promise them something that we've all already discussed would not work out this soon in 2020.
Well, we don't know that yet. I'm hearing other things.
Okay, because we've had this discussion during work session.
I know.
Okay. I don't want them to think we have not discussed it and we're just going to discuss it on February 11th. It's been discussed. I would love to continue the conversation.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
We're going to continue the conversation because I think there's been more information provided. And it may be doable. I can't say that for sure, but that's a decision we have to make. But I think we need to have that on the 11th with the data that I believe we're going to be getting. So, yes, Ms. Fields.
Is that data going to also include West finding out? I believe it to be the fact that the county commissioners will have to approve us adding to
the county commission has to put it on the ballot.
Okay, all right, let me sure.
August 1st, right?
So the supervisor election is August 1st.
It is, I think. Okay.
I believe so. Yes, Mr. Wilson?
Just a quick question for Mr. Bridges. And I'm sure we talked about this before, but I think this is something I'd like to know before we go into our meeting this evening with those teachers. If this were placed on the ballot and assuming it passed, it's my understanding it's only good for 4 years. Is that correct?
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I will get it for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next, on the committee assignments, I still need a representative to the Central Florida School Boards Coalition. Did anybody give that some thought? And would anybody be willing to fill that spot or exchange it with another board member?
Did you ever find out if we could call into that meeting?
Well, I was going to ask about the call-in.
I did not.
I know.
I was waiting on the name. Yes, she was good. Do you want to find out if they can do the call-in thing, or are you willing to?
I'll just drive. God. Yeah, I'll go. I'm a team player.
You're sweet. Okay, well, I appreciate that. All right. Bless your heart. Okay.
We'll buy you extra something.
No, yeah, right.
What are we buying her?
I'll be
Nothing.
willing to be her
You're buying me
alternate.
nothing.
Will you? She promises not to be an alternate.
Okay, did you hear this? We need to hear this, so you...
I said I would be willing to be your alternate as long as you don't need an alternate every month.
I cannot promise anything.
I owe you
to
one.
Sarah Beth.
Okay, well, I do appreciate
Between
that.
the two Sarahs, we will.
We're going to cover it.
Take care of it.
Aw, I love it. Okay.
Okay, Sarah, Sarah.
Which one shows up?
Oh, okay, Sarah.
They're always get us confused anyway, Sarah.
Okay, and then for the next work session that we're going to have, I know I asked everybody to turn in your list of things that you would like to have discussed throughout the throughout the time. And so the next one is going to be Lisa Miller's request of the professional development and leadership development for the district. So that's going to be held at the February 11th work session, extended session, call it whatever you want to call it. I'm hoping at some point we can just combine it all and just keep going. But anyways, for now, so I wanted to let you know that's coming up in a couple weeks. Yes, ma'am.
I was just gonna ask a question about that. Can we combine those on the, I know it was for last week, but if we don't combine them, then there's a time certain that we have to talk about that item, is my understanding. So, because it's a public meeting. So if we have it a time certain for 1 o'clock and then we get done at 10:30, does that make sense? Like if we have it as a separate meeting for the extended work session, then we have to sit here and wait until 1 o'clock when it's, or whatever time it's scheduled. So if we can just put it at the last item.
Can you do that?
It's a notice issue.
A notice
Right.
issue. Okay.
You can't start a conversation before it's notice to start.
Okay.
And we have the same issue sometimes with public hearings. But I think the issue there is if you have an agenda for the morning and then an agenda for the afternoon,
yes,
you have to wait until the afternoon agenda to discuss that in case there are people who were coming for that particular item. If you put it on a single agenda, start it with a starting time.
Yes.
You can go until you finish.
Okay. Can you make sure that happens?
We did last time.
Okay. I think that's all that I have. I'm sure we need to go around quickly. Board comments? Ms. Fields?
I believe at our last school board meeting, I had said that I wanted to see if the board would be agreeable to have board members report last after the public speak. Let the public speak first, and then we'd be very last to give reports, and especially tonight.
Wow. I didn't write that down, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the board?
We have a lot of people
We
supposed to
do.
be coming tonight to speak.
That's true.
So, but
Would
then
that, how do y'all feel? Is that okay?
Sure.
By consensus? Yes? No?
Can I offer a comment?
Yeah.
Well, we have, from a, I guess, organizational perspective, we allowed the board members to speak, then the public spoke, and then the board member spoke again. So we've kind of been doing that.
Right.
But we could say no board comments prior, but somebody may want to make some comments setting up the meeting, much like you did here.
Okay.
Just setting some
I'll be
ground.
happy to do that. Not board comments. I
I'm
think.
talking about when everybody goes around by district and we tell what we might want to share what we've been doing over the last month or whatever. I'm just saying if those comments can be last afterwards. Because a lot of people have made comment that they come and they have things they want to say, and then they have to sit for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, to wait for board members to give their report. And some people end up leaving because they just say it's just too long. And I know that everybody has an opinion on the matter. I just think out of respect, we're going to hear from our community. We need to be mindful of their time.
Yes, Ms. Fortney?
Funny you should say that, because I had planned on saying that I was going to yield the floor with my comments, because I'm hoping we'll have a grand turnout tonight.
Yes.
In support of livable wage, etc.
Yes.
Would that be what you're kind of?
That's what I'm asking tonight, yes.
Go ahead. Yes. Of course.
No, I think that's appropriate for this evening, but in the
Yes.
past, I mean, in future meetings, sometimes my comment might be on something we've discussed or we'll discuss later, so I don't know that I would want to do that for every meeting.
Every meeting.
Right.
How about this then? Can we all agree then for this evening, in the essence of yielding to the auditorium, if you will, that we save our public comments for last, after everyone in the audience who wants to speak has spoken? Can we say that for this evening's meeting? The show of hands, is that okay? Or yes or no?
Mr. Wilson has his hand up for.
Oh, I can't see. Sorry.
Well, from a formal perspective, I have no problem with moving the board comments last.
Right.
But I also don't want to forfeit my opportunity to say something before people come forward and speak, which is what Ms. Miller's saying, because there may be, I don't want to give up that opportunity. And so if we're just talking about these are the things I went to, these are the places that I'm okay with moving that to the end, but I still want to have the opportunity to say something if I feel it's appropriate before people come forward to speak. That's all I'm saying.
Do you want to limit the time? I don't know.
Yeah, the other thing, yeah, I would think, here's my personal feeling on it. It is so not about us up here. I am sorry. It is so not about us. Tonight is one night that we've got a plethora of individuals coming, and I think you can address what you got to address, but you can just wait and allow them the opportunity. And then if you hear certain things that you're like, wow, I need to address that, then you would address it, I think. All of us are going to want to say something this evening. You know, mine is only going to be formal. You have 3 minutes, your name, your address, you know, yada, yada. But beyond that, I think we need to yield to the audience. I really do. And I think the other comments, like you said, the other beyond that can wait.
Yeah, I'm agreeing.
You're okay. Everybody okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Let's move forward then. Okay. Anyone else? We have board comments now. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I just was gonna say, I want to say thank you to Miss Courtney. She was my alternate last week while I had the flu in Tallahassee and took copious notes at the FSBA meeting on Friday. So I'm hoping she will share
And I found
some
them.
of them.
That's the best
They were
part.
legible. I was impressed.
You were able to make sense. Yay.
So I
You're
don't-
welcome, Sarah Beth. They didn't know it wasn't, you know, I looked so young, they thought it would be.
Yeah.
So.
I figured they would be very confused with which Sarah it was.
Awesome. Okay. Anyone else? Because we still have a
Discipline.
we have discipline.
I just have one concern about the dependence thing that rolled out with the insurance verifying.
Yes.
Is anybody else's phone blown up? I guess those got mailed out and they came in the mail. Well, yesterday, because that's when I started getting phone calls apparently. Just the kind of what we were talking about as far as, I don't have my marriage license. We lost it in a hurricane, along with our Bible. You know, I mean, a litany of things. So I'm not sure how that rolled out because they were hit blindsided by it. Just FYI. I've been married 40 plus years.
Can we do a PSA video for that? Or is
There
that
is one.
work?
Yeah, we created an
There is one.
FAQ and a video.
Yeah.
Okay.
I shared it.
Thank you.
Okay.
If they're retired, they are not going on the website.
It was on, it's on the
Okay.
website.
Just letting you know.
And it's on social media.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. Then our work session for January 28th, 2020 is now adjourned.